Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepymentary channel. The journey always begins with a sound you never actually hear. The quiet moment before a rocket ignites, when thousands of tons of metal tremble, but have not yet risen, and the human heart beats louder than any engine. You're strapped into a seat built to withstand forces your body was never designed for. You feel the weight of the suit humming against your ribs, the faint pressure of the helmet sealing you into a tiny world of oxygen sensors and recycled breath. Outside the capsule, the launch pad holds its breath. The sky's bruised with dawn. Earth below you is steady and familiar. And then in a single, impossible heartbeat, you leave it behind. A rocket doesn't rise so much as it escapes. The engines erupt, shaking your bones, collapsing every thought inside your head into pure vibration. You are pressed backward as gravity tries desperately to keep you. But the thrust is relentless. First the clouds fall below, then the continents, until the very idea of down becomes meaningless. Your body is squeezed by acceleration, your breath shallow and controlled. Inside your ribcage, your heart fights between instinct and awe. The human body is ancient. It knows mountains and oceans, but not this. Not the tearing away of home. Within minutes, everything changes. The engines cut off, the crushing force disappears, and for the first time in your life, gravity releases you. It is not a gentle moment, it is a sudden, startling absence. You float forward against the restraints, weightless, suspended between a life you knew and a universe you've never met. Through the small window, Earth turns beneath you like a painting set into motion, blue oceans, curled with white storms, brown continents edged with gold. You see no borders, no roads, no cities, just a planet wrapped in its own breath. The only world you have ever known that carries air warmth and the shape of life. So before we continue, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss a single revelation as this story unfolds moment by moment in real time. Tell me in the comments where you're watching, from what time it is there, and whether you believe we're hearing the whole truth about what's unfolding above our heads. And if you want to keep the signal alive, share this video on X, Facebook, Reddit, or even just with the people who still look up at night. You are the reason we can keep following the impossible, and for that, thank you. It's here in this brief, fragile moment that the truth becomes impossible to ignore. You are leaving the cradle of everything that ever kept you alive. Space is not merely a place you enter, it is a place where you do not belong. There is no air to breathe, no pressure to hold your blood together, no ground to steady your steps or cradle your falls. Your biology is a contract written for Earth alone, and you have just stepped outside its terms. As your orbit stabilizes, the craft drifts sideways, revealing the thin line of atmosphere glowing around the planet like a soft blue shell. A halo so delicate it looks as if a single touch could tear it. From the ground, the sky seems limitless. From space, you see how fragile it truly is. A membrane thinner than a whisper, separating warm oceans from the frozen silence of the cosmos. Every breath you've ever taken passed through that line. Every life, every storm, every season, every dream. And now you're floating on the other side of it, staring back as if you've stepped outside your own childhood home. The silence of space is not peaceful, it is absolute. A perfect vacuum where sound cannot travel, where even the loudest scream would vanish before it leaves your mouth. It is a silence that presses inward, not outward, a silence that reminds you you are fragile, temporary, and astonishingly lucky to exist at all. Life anywhere in the universe may be rare, but life that can look back at itself, take a breath, and choose to leave home, that is rarer still. Your mind struggles to understand weightlessness. For all of human history, gravity has been the narrator of our movements, dictating how we walk, sit, sleep, and stand. Without it, your inner ear becomes confused, sending signals your brain has no training to decode. You drift anchored only by straps and handholds. Your limbs float into poses you didn't intend. A strange lightness creeps into your thoughts, the feeling of falling without danger, of freedom without consequence. Some astronauts describe this as euphoric, others as disorienting. Your body and mind enter a quiet conflict, each trying to redefine what normal means. And yet amid the strangeness, a realization settles in you are experiencing something no human in all the long history of Earth felt until the last century. You have become part of a story that includes rocket starlight, and the silent turning of worlds. The air that surrounds you inside the capsule is not an accident, it is a gift engineered by countless hands. The suit that hugs your skin is not clothing, it is a vessel holding you together in a place built for neither lungs nor warmth. Everything you depend on must travel with you. Fire, air, water, shelter the four elements woven into machinery that must not fail. Outside your window, the darkness is not night. It is not the kind of darkness that waits for dawn. It is the permanent cosmic black that stretches between galaxies dotted with cold stars that shine without flicker. You feel small, not belittled, but humbled, as if the universe has opened a door and allowed you to peek inside, if only for a moment. As Earth continues spinning below, you notice something else. Your fears begin to soften. Not because space is safe, but because danger becomes a constant companion woven into every breath and movement. Instead of running from it, you learn to float with it, to accept it. The mind shifts, widening, quieting. You're suspended between worlds, carried not by gravity but by intention. For a brief moment, you close your eyes, and in that pause, between breaths, with the universe pressing silently at your window and the planet glowing below you, understand why humanity leaves home despite the risks. Not because it is easy, not because it is safe, but because curiosity is older than fear, because wonder is stronger than gravity, because somewhere deep inside every human carries a small persistent urge to step beyond the horizon and ask what else is out there. Here at the thin line between Earth and nothing, the journey begins. Before an astronaut can ever place a hand on a hatch or drift into the void, there is a ritual unlike any other in modern life. It begins slowly, almost reverently, with the assembly of a machine that looks like clothing, but behaves like a small obedient planet, a private ecosystem molded around a single human body. A spacesuit is not worn. It is entered, inhabited, and trusted with everything you are. It becomes the walls, the atmosphere, the shielding, and the gravity you no longer have. You feel the weight of it even before you stand hundreds of components, everyone indispensable. In the dim light of the suit-up room, where technicians move with quiet precision, the suit hangs open like a metallic chrysalis. There is a stillness here, an unspoken understanding that once the suit closes, you will be stepping into a domain where humans were never meant to survive. A thin layer of polymer, metal, fabric, and engineering will become the only thing separating your vulnerable skin from a vacuum that could boil your blood and freeze your tears in seconds. The inner lining is the first layer. When you slip your arms through it, it feels more like a second skin than clothing. Soft, breathable, and threaded with fine tubes carrying water. These tubes form the liquid cooling and ventilation garment, a hidden river system designed to draw heat away from your body. Out in the sunlight of space, radiant heat can climb until it scorches metal. In shadow, temperatures plunge into the kind of cold that cracks steel. Your body cannot adapt quickly enough. The suit must do it for you, pumping cool water and warm water through carefully controlled loops, becoming your artificial metabolism. Next comes the pressure bladder layer. This is the invisible atmosphere you carry with you, a pressurized cocoon that holds your organs, blood, and tissues in the shape Earth intended. Without it, the vacuum outside would pull gases out of your bloodstream, expand your lungs, and strain every vessel. The bladder layer hugs your body tightly, firm enough to counter the deadly nothingness, just millimeters away, yet flexible enough to let you move with something resembling human grace. Then comes the restraint layer, a hidden skeleton made of woven fibers, preventing the pressure suit from ballooning into a round, rigid bubble. On Earth, this layer feels stiff and unyielding, but in microgravity, it becomes a partner transmitting force from your arms and legs as you push against nothing but inertia. For engineers, this layer is a masterpiece. For astronauts, it is the reason they can bend an elbow or grip a handrail without fighting a swollen sphere of fabric. The outer shell is the armor. It is built from impact-resistant materials like Kevlar and Nomex, designed to absorb micrometeorite hits no larger than grains of sand, yet fast enough to puncture aluminum. These particles travel at speeds that would reduce a bullet to a slow-moving pebble. The suit's shell must block these cosmic darts, ward off radiation, and insulate against the temperature swings that turn sunlight into fire and shadow into deep Arctic night. On top of all this, it must still be light enough for a human being to move in, think in, breathe in. And then there is the helmet, the clear bubble that becomes your window to the universe. When the gold-coated visor descends, it filters ultraviolet radiation with a thin sheet of real gold spread so finely that a single ounce can cover vast surfaces. Gold does not tarnish. It does not corrode. It reflects the merciless energy of the sun with surprising elegance. Through that visor, you will see Earth as a curved ocean of blues and whites. You will see the moon as chalk against black velvet. You will see stars that pierce through the void without twinkling. But you will also see your own reflection, your breath fogging the inside surface, your eyes wide with both wonder and fear. The visor hides these expressions from others, but not from yourself. In the backpack, the portable life support system hums a world's worth of machinery, shrunk into a metal box: oxygen tanks, carbon dioxide scrubbers, pressure regulators, pumps, fans, batteries and telemetry systems. It is the smallest life-sustaining habitat ever built, keeping the chemical balance of your blood stable, your lungs full, your temperature controlled. Every time you inhale, you are trusting that box. Every time you exhale, it catches your carbon dioxide and traps it in filters before it can poison you. The suit is vigilant. It notices everything. Moisture temperature shifts. Pressure changes the speed of your breathing, even your heart rate. Inside the suit, your own senses become muted. Sound is a combination of mechanical hums, your breath bouncing off plastic, and the faint vibrations of movements transmitted through gloves that feel thick as winter armor. The gloves' marvels of engineering are the greatest point of contention. They are designed to protect but not to yield. The stiff layers and internal pressure push back against your fingers with every motion. Turning a bolt feels like wrestling with a stubborn machine. Gripping a handle can bruise the nails. A spacewalk can leave the hands aching for days, each fingertip raw. But without the gloves, the vacuum would claim you in a heartbeat. And yet astronauts describe a moment of strange intimacy when they are fully suited. When the final seals lock, when the technicians step back, when the fan inside the helmet begins its steady exhale, the suit stops being equipment. It becomes a companion, a fragile humming world you must trust more deeply than most people trust another human being. In emergencies, the suit is your last and only defender. In routine work, it is your collaborator. In moments of awe, looking down at a glowing Earth or across the infinite night, it becomes the barrier that lets you witness what no unprotected human body could ever endure. Comparing today's suits to the ones from Apollo is like comparing a mountain tent to an entire house. The Apollo suits were astonishing for their time, stitched by hand, layered with fabric and aluminum, resilient enough to walk on a world with 1/6 gravity and no atmosphere. They protected the first humans to step onto lunar soil, but they were rigid, fragile in their own way and had limited mobility. Astronauts stumbled, often moving like armored knights with oxygen tanks. Modern suits like NASA's EMU or the new Artemis generation designs reflect 50 years of learning more flexibility, better cooling, digital readouts, modular parts, improved radiation protection, and joint bearings that rotate smoothly. And yet, they are still prototypes of a future yet to come. For Mars engineers are developing suits that must survive dust sharper than glass radiation, harsher than Earth orbit, and gravity that is enough to pull you down but not enough to keep your muscles from fading. These suits must bend like clothing shield-like armor and breathe like a living lung. One day, a suit will walk across the red desert of Mars, its visor reflecting a sky, tinted in butterscotch and blue. Its occupant will take slow, deliberate steps, knowing that the fabric around their body is the only thing preserving warmth, pressure, air, and life. The suit will become history's first human home on another world, and behind that moment stands this simple truth. Before a person can touch another planet, they must first learn to trust the world they wear. From the moment you reach orbit, before the excitement settles, before the colors of Earth have even faded from your visor, a quiet transformation begins inside your body. It's not dramatic. There's no sudden sensation, no audible click or shift. But deep within your spine, inside the long, flexible column that has carried your weight since you first learned to walk, something starts to happen. The load you've carried your entire life disappears, and the body responds in the only way it knows how it begins to unfold. Back on Earth, gravity is a constant sculptor. It presses you down day and night, compressing your vertebrae, flattening the discs between them, pulling your ligaments tight like stretched ropes. Even as you sleep, gravity never stops shaping you. But in space, that downward pull vanishes. It's as if someone suddenly removed the invisible hand that has been resting on your shoulders for decades. And without that steady pressure, your spine begins to lengthen. Astronauts often grow between 3 and 5 centimeters, sometimes more, within the first few days in orbit. It is not just the bones that shift, but the soft tissues the intervertebral discs absorb. Fluid and expand, ligaments loosen. and the natural S-curve of the spine straightens slightly. This growth is not the triumphant stretching of a morning yawn, but an involuntary rearrangement. Your body is trying to find a new equilibrium in an environment that rewrites the rules it has known since birth. But growth comes with consequences. As the spine decompresses, it tugs on surrounding muscles that have never been asked to hold this new shape. The long muscles along the back, multifidus erector spinae, the deep stabilizers are suddenly stretched beyond their accustomed length. They protest, they spasm, they cramp. Astronauts describe the sensation as a persistent ache, like the soreness after lifting something too heavy or sleeping in the wrong position, but multiplied. It is a strange kind of pain, a reminder that your body is trying to grow into a shape it was never designed to hold for long. In the microgravity of space muscles responsible for posture, no longer know what to do. They aren't pushing against the downward pull of Earth. They aren't stabilizing your torso as you walk, stand, or sit. Instead, they drift into a state of quiet confusion. Some weaken, some stiffen, some flicker in and out of effort as your nervous system tries to ask muscles to perform tasks that no longer make sense. The connective tissues, those quiet, delicate webs that bind muscles to bones, wrap organs, and give your body its shape, also react. Fascia, the thin sheets of collagen that connect everything to everything, become slack. Tendons lose tension. Ligaments robbed of the forces that once kept them taut soften. The body becomes both lighter and less stable, like a tent whose ropes have loosened. You float effortlessly, but inside your architecture trembles. Even the tiny joints between the vertebrae, the facet joints, shift. On Earth, they are tightly compressed, holding the spine like a stack of interlocking stones. In space, the absence of compression allows them to glide slightly, a freedom that feels foreign. Sometimes this movement is painless. Sometimes it is sharp, catching like a pinched nerve. The spine is remembering its old shape while learning a new one, suspended between memory and adaptation. The pain usually stabilizes after a week or two once the body settles into a new space normal. But the spine is never entirely comfortable. It remembers gravity, how it felt, how it held you, how it kept your organs pressed into familiar arrangements. There is a kind of homesickness in the musculoskeletal system, a longing for the gentle downward tug that once told every bone and muscle where to be. And when astronauts return to Earth, the process reverses violently. Gravity reclaims its hold, compressing the newly expanded discs, tightening the soft tissues, and forcing the spine back into its old Earth-shaped form. The first steps after landing feel heavy, clumsy, almost alien. Some astronauts describe the experience as if their skeleton were made of sand, shifting unpredictably beneath skin and muscle. Others say they feel like collapsing the spine, buckling under the weight it hasn't held for months. It can take weeks for the discs to fully compress again, for the muscles to reactivate, for the ligaments to tighten, for the body to remember how to be human under gravity. All of this reveals a quiet truth. Human beings are finely tuned, delicate structures strong enough to climb mountains and survive deserts, yet vulnerable to the absence of a force we never consciously acknowledge. We imagine ourselves sturdy, resilient, adaptable. But remove gravity, just one ingredient in the long recipe of life, and we stretch, warp, ache, drift and forget. The spine, more than any other part of the skeleton, carries this story. It carries the memory of Earth with it. It carries the imprint of millions of years spent standing, walking, lifting, resting, bending under one unbroken pull. In space, the spine grows taller, but it also grows lonely. It longs for the weight that once shaped it, the weight that told it who it was. And so, floating in the artificial dawn of a spacecraft, the Earth spinning below like a slow dream, you become aware of a quiet irony. Leaving home does not only change your view of the world, it changes the shape of your body, stretching you into a reminder that even in orbit, Earth is still holding on to you in ways you can feel only when its pull is gone. It sounds impossible at first. Space is a vacuum, silent, airless, unable to carry scent. And yet astronauts speak of it with the same certainty someone might describe rain on warm pavement, or the scent of a forest after a storm. They return from spacewalks, crack open the airlock hatch, and a strange aroma follows them inside. A smell clings to the suit, to the gloves, to the metal tools. It drifts off the fabric like a memory returning to Earth. They describe it as hot metal, burnt steak, a faint whiff of welding fumes, a hint of ozone. One astronaut said it reminded him of gunpowder after it's been fired. Another said it was like the smell of an engine cooling after a long day. How can a place with no air have a smell at all? The secret lies not in space itself, but in what happens to the materials exposed to it. Every surface of a spacesuit, every metal edge of a spacecraft is bombarded by a constant stream of high-energy particles, ultraviolet light gamma rays, atomic oxygen, cosmic rays, and solar wind ions. This radiation interacts with the materials in ways that simply never occur on Earth. In the vacuum outside the station, these assaults break molecular bonds. They tear electrons free, they rearrange atoms, they create unstable fragments, reactive molecules that wait dormant locked onto the surface of a visor or glove. And when the astronaut returns through the airlock and the hatch seals behind them, warm oxygen-rich air flows over those altered surfaces. The reactive fragments combine with oxygen and moisture, creating entirely new aromatic compounds within seconds. The smell astronauts describe is not the scent of space itself, but the scent of Earth meeting space. It is the smell of chemistry, awakened cosmic residue reacting with familiar air. Consider what happens when a meteor streaks through the atmosphere. It burns, leaving a trail of metallic ions and hot vapor. The smell of a meteor shower, if you could stand directly beneath one, would carry notes of iron and ozone. Spacewalk suits return from the void with a similar signature, not because anything burned, but because high-energy particles carved microscopic scars into their surfaces, the way fire leaves its mark on metal. On Earth you can smell lightning even before it strikes. The same sharp electrical tang ozone appears when UV light from space strips oxygen molecules apart and reassembles them. On the ISS, astronauts often notice this scent after opening a hatch exposed to sunlight, as if a silent storm had passed by, invisible but electrically alive. There is a poetry in this, a strange sensory bridge, a whisper from the universe translated into a language the human nose can understand. Space may be void of air, but it is rich in energy, violent, unfiltered, relentless. Materials carry the memory of that exposure. They bring back a trace of something ancient and elemental, a scent forged in the same radiation that shaped planets and carved atmospheres. When astronauts breathe it in, they are inhaling the aftertaste of creation. Some describe the smell as comforting, reminding them of machinery engines' hot metal after long hours of use, a scent of industry, of labor, of humanity's attempt to shape the world. Others find it unsettling, a reminder that space is not a gentle place. It is an environment where metal is constantly aging, where plastic slowly becomes brittle, where electronics degrade with every orbit. In the early Apollo missions, astronauts noted a different smell once inside the lunar module moon dust. Brought in on boots and gloves, the dust smelled like burnt gunpowder or spent fireworks. It was not gunpowder, of course, but dust so chemically reactive, fresh from billions of years of micrometeorite impacts, that contact with oxygen caused a brief strange bloom of molecules never encountered on Earth. It is a humbling idea that the moon has a scent Earth never knew until we touched it. That the vacuum between stars leaves fingerprints you can smell. That the universe, silent and airless, still finds a way to speak to the human senses. Cosmic chemistry is almost mythic in scale. Atoms forged in the hearts of stars travel across the void, collide with spacecraft hulls, reshape surfaces, and leave behind signals that only activate when they return to the atmospheric cradle of Earth. The smell astronauts notice is a message written in photons and particles decoded by human biology, a reminder that the universe is not empty, it is active, dynamic, endlessly sculpting everything that dares to venture beyond gravity's reach. There is also something deeply symbolic in this small sensory detail. When an astronaut smells hot metal after a spacewalk, it becomes a bridge between worlds, with 1 foot still, in the ancient, warm-breathing world of Earth, and 1 foot stepping into a cosmos so cold it cannot carry sound. The scent becomes a fleeting translation of a place we cannot touch directly, a moment where the nose interprets the message the universe has etched onto the suit. Maybe that is why astronauts speak of it with such quiet reverence. Not because the smell is pleasant or unpleasant, but because it is real, tangible, a sensory proof that they have crossed into a place beyond human design and returned with a mark of it clinging to them. And perhaps in the end that is the truest meaning of the smell of space, a reminder that every journey beyond Earth leaves traces, chemical, physical, emotional, etched onto the things we carry and the bodies we inhabit. A reminder that even the void has a story to tell if you know how to listen with something other than your ears. The human body is a masterpiece of adaptation, but only within the world where it evolved. Every bone, tendon, and muscle was sculpted by gravity, trained by millions of years to resist the downward pull of Earth. Your skeleton is not simply a frame, it is a living mineral bank constantly responding to pressure, impact, tension, and strain. Your muscles are engines built to work against weight. Your bones are the beams reinforced by every step you take. But the moment you enter microgravity, all those rules dissolve. The body begins to unbuild itself. In orbit, your weight becomes zero. Your bones feel no load. Your legs no longer carry you. Your arms no longer lift anything heavier than a drifting tool. And in this weightless freedom, the body misreads the situation not as danger, but as efficiency. It thinks there is no need for this much bone, no need for this much muscle. Save energy, break it down, and so it does. The slow evaporation of the skeleton. Within the first week, your bones begin losing calcium at a rate that would alarm any doctor on Earth. Without the constant pressure of walking, standing, and resisting gravity, the cells responsible for bone-building osteoblasts slow down. Meanwhile, the cells that break bone down osteoclasts accelerate. It is as if the body shifts into reverse. Astronauts can lose 1 to 2% of bone mass per month, especially in the hips, spine, and legs. Over a long mission, that loss becomes life-changing. The bones grow porous, fragile, prone to fracture. If a person spent a year in space without countermeasures, they would return with the skeletal density of an elderly patient with advanced osteoporosis. Even worse, the calcium released from dissolving bone doesn't vanish. It enters the bloodstream, raising calcium levels far above normal. The body must filter this excess through the kidneys, and kidneys unprepared for such a burden struggle. This is why astronauts have an increased risk of kidney stones, solid, painful crystals grown from the minerals their bones surrendered to space. It is a strange irony. In the most advanced frontier humanity has ever reached, the body begins to crumble from the inside out, the very structure that carried you to the stars quietly dissolving. When muscles forget their purpose. Muscles fare no better. Without gravity, your largest muscle groups go on strike. Your legs, the quadriceps, hamstrings, calves shrink quickly. The muscles that stabilize your spine weaken. Even the heart loses mass, no longer pumping blood upward against gravity. In weightlessness, blood floats more freely. The heart doesn't need to push as hard, so it begins to atrophy. The body only maintains what it uses, and in space it uses almost nothing. Floating through the ISS feels effortless. You do not walk, climb, or stand. Every movement is a gentle push. Over weeks, then months, that effortlessness becomes a trap. Without intervention, your body becomes tuned for a world where no strength is needed. Returning to Earth after such a long stay would be like waking from a coma, heavy, painful, disorienting. The machines that fight gravity. To counter this, astronauts spend 2 hours every day doing what could be called artificial gravity training. They tie themselves into machines designed to simulate the pressure and strain their bodies crave. Our advanced resistive exercise device is the backbone of this effort, a machine that uses vacuum cylinders to replicate weights. It lets astronauts squat, deadlift, and press, even though nothing actually weighs anything. T2, the space treadmill, is another key ally. Astronauts tether themselves with bungee cords, pulling their bodies downward so they can run. It is an awkward, bouncing experience, but it forces the bones and muscles in the legs to remember their purpose. And then there is Cevis, the cycling machine floating in the middle of a module, its pedals spinning in the air. Without these creations, 6 months in orbit could destroy years of bone and muscle. Yet even with strict exercise, astronauts still lose mass. The machines slow the decay, they do not stop it. The long-game, multi-year missions for lunar bases or short stays in orbit, this slow dissolution can be managed. But for humanity's next steps, missions to Mars, this becomes a crisis. A journey to Mars is roughly 8-9 months in microgravity each way. Add a year or more on the surface and astronauts could experience 20% bone density loss in weight-bearing regions, significant muscle atrophy, increased kidney stone risk, cardiac weakening, difficulty even standing on arrival, higher fracture risk on Mars's rocky terrain. Even Mars's gravity, roughly 38% of Earth's, may not be enough to reverse the damage. It's a world where objects weigh less, footsteps land softly, and muscles still do not fully engage. For a colony to thrive, gravity itself may need to be engineered. Artificial gravity, the dream that keeps returning. One solution that appears again and again in engineering plans is the rotating habitat, a spacecraft that spins to simulate gravity through centrifugal force. Films have shown it, scientists have modelled it, Engineers have drafted versions since the 1960s, but none has flown, not yet. Such a system would create normal bone loading, natural muscle use, more Earth-like circulation, fewer long-term health risks. It might be the only way humans can live among the stars for years, not months. And yet rotation introduces new challenges. Coriolis forces dizzy spells, engineering complexity. The human body seems caught between two worlds, unable to thrive long-term without gravity, yet destined to explore environments where gravity is often a luxury. The human fragility revealed in the quiet modules of the ISS astronauts float with laughter and ease. But inside them the slow erosion continues, bones thinning muscles, shrinking kidneys, straining blood, shifting. Their bodies are fighting a battle against the absence of a force they never realized they needed. It is not a failure of biology. It is proof of how deeply we belong to Earth. Millions of years of evolution tuned us to this planet's pull, with a precision so delicate that removing gravity unravels us thread by thread, and yet we go anyway. We build machines to mimic the weight we lost. We strengthen bodies in an environment where strength has no purpose. We prepare for a future where human beings may live years, decades without feeling the full weight of their own bodies. In a sense, the first explorers to Mars will carry more than tools and survival gear. They will carry bones that remember mountains muscles shaped by forests and hearts, built for a world far heavier than the one they are traveling to. And as those bones grow lighter, and those muscles fade, a new truth emerges. Leaving Earth is not only a technological challenge, it is a biological negotiation between what we dream of becoming and what our bodies were made to be. If you have seen the sun rise from Earth, you may think you know its brightness. You may remember mornings when sunlight flooded through windows, afternoons when the sky turned a clean, impossible blue, evenings when the last golden edge of the sun painted the clouds in fire. But all of that, every colour, every soft glow, is an illusion crafted by the atmosphere, a filter, a veil. In space the sun is something else entirely. There is no sky to soften it, no air to scatter its light, no molecules to turn the blue wavelengths into the dome overhead. What you see instead is a star burning raw. Astronauts describe it as almost violent, a brightness so sharp, so unfiltered that it looks more white than yellow, more electric than warm. It has no halo, no flare softened by humidity, no gentle gradient fading into sky. It is a perfect disk of pure radiation, so bright it looks unreal, like a hole punched into the black fabric of the universe, with brilliant white fire pouring through. It is not just light, it is energy in its purest form, concentrated and direct. And beside that brilliance, the shadows it casts are some of the darkest in the universe. The sun that stares back. When astronauts look directly at the sun through the thick gold visor, one of the few things that allows them to face it at all, they describe an emotional jolt. Not fear exactly, but shock. Awe sharpened into something that feels ancient. A primal moment of recognition. That is the thing that keeps everything alive. That is the thing that could kill me instantly if not for this thin visor. That is the star that has burned for billions of years and will burn for billions more. On Earth, sunlight is gentle because the atmosphere protects you. In space, that protection is gone. Without the visor's gold foil, ultraviolet and infrared radiation would scorch the retina instantly. Because in space, the sun is not a warm friend, it is a nuclear furnace radiating photons that travel 150 million kilometers without losing their edge. A single second of direct exposure can leave permanent damage. A single miscalculation during a spacewalk could blind an astronaut. This is why the visor is coated in real gold. Gold does not tarnish. It reflects radiation with extraordinary efficiency. When astronauts lower the visor, it feels like donning armor, thin armor, fragile armor, but armor nonetheless against a star that does not care whether it warms or destroys. Brutal shadows, night that arrives without warning. On Earth, shadows are soft. Light wraps around objects. It fades gradually. Not so in space. If sunlight strikes one side of a spacecraft, that side is bathed in blinding illumination, white, harsh, intense. But the opposite side, only centimeters away, falls into a darkness so complete it feels like falling off the edge of existence. The line between light and dark is razor sharp. No twilight, no gradient, no transition. Astronauts describe this as one of the strangest sensations to reach out and place a hand across that line. feeling sunlight heat one side of the suit, while the other side chills toward 150 degrees. This contrast is not poetic, it is physical, it is dangerous. It is the price of living in a vacuum where heat has no air to travel through. In sunlight, metal surfaces can climb above 120 degrees Celsius. In shadow, they plunge far below freezing. A tool left half in sunlight and half in shadow can crack from thermal stress. A cable stretched across that deadly divide can become brittle. A visor can fog or frost instantly. The shadows of space are not empty, they are powerful. The physics of unfiltered light. To understand why the sun is so shocking in orbit, you must imagine photons, the elementary particles of light, pouring outward in straight lines from the solar surface. On Earth, these photons collide with atmosphere, scatter, bounce, diffuse, and lose direction. They fill the sky with colour. But above the atmosphere, photons travel unhindered. No scattering, no diffusion, no softening. Every photon that reaches an astronaut's visor arrived directly from the surface of the sun. You're looking at the star with the safety removed, in that raw beam of visible light. Ultraviolet radiation strong enough to sterilize. Infrared radiation that can overheat a suit X-rays in faint traces. High-energy particles from the solar wind. Standing in direct sunlight in space is like standing naked under a magnifying glass held by the universe. This is why spacecraft must be painted white to reflect sunlight and avoid deadly overheating. It's why electronics are shielded, why radiators are enormous, why thermal control systems hum constantly. In orbit, heat is a negotiation between the star that floods you with energy and the dark vacuum that steals it away. The emotional impact. Astronauts often describe the sun in space in artistic terms. It looks too bright to be real. It is like a living thing. It feels close even though it isn't. No photograph has ever captured it. One astronaut said, "It doesn't shine, it burns." Another, "You feel it watching you." And perhaps that makes sense. For millions of years, humans experienced the sun through the lens of atmosphere filtered, softened, wrapped in blue. But when you remove that blue veil, the sun reveals its true face, a star, not a symbol. A nuclear fireball, not a warm circle children draw in crayons. It becomes something ancient and indifferent. Something more powerful than fear. Something that reminds you how fragile you truly are. The poetry of light and dark. Floating outside a spacecraft, you are caught between extremes. White light so powerful it feels carved from the bones of the star, and shadows so black they seem bottomless. This contrast so sharp it feels unreal, creates a kind of cosmic duality. One hemisphere burns, the other freezes. You are the fragile line between them. No other environment in the universe available to humans creates such extremes so close together. It is the universe teaching you its first lesson. Light is not gentle. Darkness is not empty. And your existence depends on the narrow balance between them. In space, the sun does not rise. It does not set. It does not warm gently or fade softly. It simply is eternal, unshielded, unbroken, white, merciless, magnificent. And every astronaut who has seen it says the same thing in different words. You never forget the first time you face the star without a sky. Food is one of the most human things we do. It grounds us, comforts us, connects us to home and culture and memory. But when you leave the planet, even eating becomes an engineering problem. The moment gravity disappears, the rules of the table dissolve with it. Nothing stays put. Crumbs become hazards, steam doesn't rise, soup doesn't pour, and food stops behaving like food. On Earth, you rarely think about what gravity actually does. It pulls flavors against your tongue. It keeps liquids in bowls. It guides aromas into your nose. It lets crumbs fall harmlessly to the plate. In space, every one of those instincts vanishes, leaving behind a strange new culinary universe. The art of food that doesn't float away. NASA's first food was dry, crumbly, and packaged like toothpaste. Modern space cuisine is far better, but still shaped by a simple, non-negotiable requirement: nothing can break apart, nothing can drift, nothing can become debris. A single breadcrumb floating into a ventilation fan can cause serious damage. A drop of soup drifting into electronics can be catastrophic. So engineers redesigned meals for a world where food behaves like mischievous drifting creatures. That's why astronauts use tortillas instead of bread. Tortillas cling, they bend, they don't explode into crumbs. A tortilla becomes a universal tool, a wrapper plate, a delivery system for nearly every meal. It's the closest thing to an edible container. Fruits. Many are irradiated not for safety alone but to keep them from spoiling halfway through a mission. Irradiation slows decay, preserves freshness, and prevents mold. A fresh apple on the ISS is a luxury not for its taste alone, but because it still remembers what Earth feels like. Salt and pepper. They come in liquid bottles, not shakers. Granules would float, scatter, or clog filters. Instead, they're suspended in water so a droplet can be squeezed onto food, where surface tension keeps it glued in place until you take a bite. Even water is different. It never pours. It forms floating spheres, wobbling, shimmering orbs that follow wherever your hand guides them. To drink, you squeeze pouches. To cook, you inject water into sealed packets through tiny ports. Space cuisine is not about recipes. It's about containment. The pouches that replaced kitchens. Most meals arrive dehydrated. To eat them, astronauts use warm water dispensers to rehydrate dishes stored inside plastic pouches. You knead the pouch, shake it, clip it open, and then you eat directly from the corner, squeezing tiny portions out like a traveler eating lunch from a tube. Some meals come thermostabilized heat, treated to stay fresh for months. These come in small cans or soft pouches and can be eaten with a spoon that magnetically attaches to the table to keep it from drifting away. Even silverware must be managed. Forks and spoons velcro to trays. Drinking straws have valves. Everything floats unless tethered. There is no sizzle of cooking, no smell of sautéing, no shared kitchen. Food is assembled, not cooked. Prepared, not crafted. Functional, not artistic. And yet astronauts still describe certain meals with joy: macaroni and cheese curry rice chocolate pudding. Not because the taste is extraordinary, but because the experience is a moment of normalcy in a place where almost nothing else feels familiar. When flavor gets lost in space. Taste itself changes in microgravity. Without gravity pulling fluids downward, more blood stays in the head. The face puffs slightly. The sinuses swell. You feel as though you have a mild cold constantly. And when your nose is congested, your sense of taste dulls. Astronauts crave bold flavors: spicy, tangy, salty, garlic-rich, smoky. Hot sauces disappear quickly. Curry becomes comfort food. Wasabi becomes a delicacy. It's not about heat. It's about sensation food that cuts through the muted world of space taste. Food as culture, memory, and sanity. In the confined modules of the ISS meals take on an emotional weight far beyond their nutritional value. Food becomes a reminder of home, childhood, family traditions, holidays, identity. A Japanese astronaut might heat up miso soup. A Russian cosmonaut might carefully open a pouch of borscht. An American astronaut might savor peanut butter or Thanksgiving turkey. These meals become tiny rituals, anchors in the drifting world of microgravity. Astronauts often share meals, floating together around a table with straps instead of chairs. They exchange pouches, swap bites, laugh at the awkwardness of eating. In a place where schedules are rigid and danger is constant, mealtime is one of the few moments where humanity breathes freely. No matter how cramped the spacecraft, no matter how sterile the environment, a shared meal gives astronauts something precious, a sense of belonging. The psychology of food in isolation. Long missions test not just the body but the mind. Confined spaces, strict routines, and constant vigilance create emotional fatigue. Food becomes a psychological lifeline. Comfort food can lift morale. New flavors break monotony. Seasonal treats feel like holidays transported across the void. Even the act of choosing a meal from the storage racks gives astronauts a sense of agency, small but meaningful. Food is one of the few things astronauts can customize, a rare moment where they make a personal decision not dictated by mission protocols. This becomes even more important in future plans for Mars missions or deep space habitats, where mental resilience will be as critical as physical strength. Engineers and psychologists study how food variety, cultural familiarity, and even color affect long-term well-being. A colony on Mars will need more than survival rations. It will need flavor, memory, comfort, identity, the smell of something warm, the taste of a world left behind, the future. Space farms and Martian kitchens. Humanity will not thrive on pouches and tubes forever. Long-term missions will require growing food in orbit and on planetary surfaces. Experiments have already produced space-grown lettuce, dwarf tomatoes, radishes, chili peppers. These small harvests bring joy that transcends nutrition. When astronauts take the first bite of a leaf grown entirely off Earth, they describe it as a moment of connection, a reminder that life can take root wherever we carry it. On Mars, cooking will evolve again. The gravity will be low enough to keep crumbs dangerous but strong enough to allow some traditional cooking. Future colonists may one day bake bread, simmer stew, or craft meals that taste like home meals that reintroduce culture into a world of red dust. Because if humans are to build new worlds, they will need more than tools and airlocks. They will need stories, flavor, tradition, everything that makes us human. And sometimes that journey begins with something as simple as a tortilla floating gently in a cabin where gravity has let go. In space, even sleep must be reinvented. On Earth you lie down because gravity tells your body which way is down. Your muscles relax, your spine settles. Your mind drifts as weight slowly leaves your limbs, but in orbit there is no down, no bed, no sinking into anything. There is only drifting your body floating like a leaf in still air. Astronauts don't sleep in beds, they sleep strapped to the wall. Inside the ISS, each crew member has a small crew quarters barely the size of a phone booth. Inside hangs a cocoon-like sleeping bag anchored to the wall ceiling, or floor labels that lose meaning in microgravity. Astronauts slide inside, zip up and let their limbs float freely within the bag. Without straps, their bodies would drift gently across the cabin, bumping into equipment or teammates. Imagine closing your eyes and feeling the entire concept of lying down vanish. No pressure points, no mattress, no weight, just floating. The strange comfort of a human cocoon. The sleeping bag becomes a second skin, not for warmth but for orientation. Without it, your arms would rise in front of you like ghosts. Your legs would drift apart. Your head might slowly rotate backward. The bag gives your body boundaries, a reminder of shape, a sense of containment. Astronauts describe the sensation as peaceful, even womb-like. Others find it disorienting, especially in the first days. Your brain expects the familiar cues of sleephead sinking into a pillow muscles, relaxing the weight of blankets. None of that exists here. Instead, you float into unconsciousness as if you were suspended in deep water without ever touching it. The sounds of the night that never darkens, but sleep in space is not silent, nor dark. The ISS hums constantly, fans, whirring pumps, cycling air being pushed through filters to keep its atmosphere alive. There is a faint rattling of panels, the click of relays, the periodic thump of equipment adjusting pressure. Even sunlight is complicated. It rises and sets every 90 minutes as the station orbits Earth. Astronauts live in a world where day and night flicker past like the pages of a book. 16 sunrises, 16 sunsets, every single day. To block the flood of light, they close shutters. To calm the noise, they rely on the rhythmic hum, white noise that strangely becomes comforting over time. Some astronauts compare it to sleeping next to a ship engine. Others say the constant sound is a reminder you are alive because machines haven't stopped. Circadian rhythms with no sun to guide them. Human sleep cycles depend on light. The brain watches the sky, measures the fading of daylight, listens to the rhythm of darkness. Without that natural cycle, the internal clock, our circadian rhythm, begins to drift like a slow-moving tide. In orbit, the abundance of sunrises confuses it. So does the absence of gravity, which subtly affects blood flow and changes the very pressure inside the skull. NASA and ESA sleep studies show astronauts sleep about 6 hours, often less than ideal. Their REM cycles can shift unpredictably. Melatonin levels fluctuate. Dreams become vivid, sometimes bizarre. To counter this, the station uses carefully designed lighting, bright blue-tinted lights during working hours, and warm dim lights in the evening cycles that tell the brain to release melatonin. Some astronauts use sleep masks. Some rely on audio tracks. Some take supplements. But even with science, the body knows it is far from home. Dreams in zero gravity. Strange floating theatres. Dreams behave differently in microgravity. Many astronauts describe dreams of floating, not surreal floating, but floating exactly as they experience it while awake. Their minds blend the sensations, making sleep feel like an extension of their day. Others dream of running, falling, or lifting objects only to wake and feel the absence of weight, the absence of motion, the absence of everything familiar. There is something deeply symbolic about dreaming in space. Your mind drifts untethered. Your body rests untethered. You become a dream drifting inside a dream. A few astronauts report dreams about Earth, about forests, beaches, rainstorms, crowded rooms, the feeling of grass underfoot. The body remembers gravity even when the environment does not. Why sleep matters more here than anywhere. Sleep is not just rest in space, it is survival. A tired astronaut makes mistakes, loses focus, misjudges force in microgravity, forgets tools, misreads telemetry, acts impulsively in a place where impulsive actions can be deadly. NASA studies each astronaut's sleep like a medical procedure. Slow-wave sleep is monitored, REM cycles are recorded, light exposure is controlled. Because the brain floating in a spacecraft must remain sharp, calm and steady. When you are orbiting Earth at 28,000 kilometers per hour, fatigue is not a nuisance, it is a threat, a meditation on rest above the world. Picture this, you're zipped into a cocoon, you're floating, the walls hum around you, your body weighs nothing, your breathing echoes softly inside your hood. Outside your thin metal hull, the universe is silent and infinite. Inside it your heart beats with the quiet insistence of life. You close your eyes. You imagine the Earth spinning below cities, glowing oceans, stretching dark and ancient forests, breathing out oxygen you will not inhale for months. And for a moment the hum of the station feels like a lullaby. You drift not downward but inward, into a sleep that belongs neither to Earth nor space. A sleep suspended in a place where dreams float freely and morning is whatever you decide it to be. This is sleep in orbit, half science, half adaptation, half gentle surrender to a world without weight. The first time you cry in space, you don't feel the tears fall. They don't roll down your cheeks. They don't gather at your jaw or drop onto your shirt or fall silently into your hands. Instead, they cling to you, growing, merging, swelling into shimmering globes that float against your skin like tiny planets refusing to leave orbit. It is one of the strangest sensations astronauts describe, the intimate moment when your own tears forget how to fall, when gravity leaves tears become something else. On Earth, crying is guided by a familiar choreography. Gravity pulls tears downward, muscles contract, eyelids squeeze moisture out, even the act of wiping your eyes makes sense. In microgravity, the entire system loses direction. Tears pull sideways, upward, inward, anywhere except down. Surface tension, normally a subtle force, becomes dominant. Moisture clings to the skin, forming a liquid lens that distorts vision, blurring the cabin lights into soft halos. If the tears build up enough, they can merge into blobs that detach and drift away in slow motion, tiny transparent worlds reflecting the blue glow of instrument panels. Astronauts learn to cry differently, not in streams but in spheres. Some have even demonstrated this on camera, tears expanding into perfect liquid bubbles, wobbling as they grow heavier with emotion, yet floating weightlessly, as if mocking the very idea of crying. And the sensation isn't purely poetic, it can be uncomfortable. Without gravity to drain fluid from the head, astronauts already experience swollen faces, puffy eyes, and increased pressure in the skull. Adding tears to that mix creates real irritation. Moisture that cannot escape the eye can sting, causing burning and redness. Vision can blur. On Earth, crying cleanses. In space, it stagnates. Fluid dynamics of a tear that refuses to fall in the microgravity arena of orbit water behaves like a creature more than a liquid. It clings, it crawls, it stretches into shapes. Gravity never allows pearls, rings, trembling spheres. Tears behave exactly the same way surface tension keeps them attached to the skin. Adhesion makes them stick to eyelashes. Cohesion merges them into bigger drops. Capillary action draws them across the face. Without gravity pulling them down, they simply spread sideways upward anywhere. If enough tears accumulate, astronauts sometimes wipe them away with a towel or gently shake their heads to detach a floating bubble. Watching an orb of water drift across a cabin, perfect, shimmering, fragile, is like watching grief leave the body in slow, surreal motion. In a place where nothing weighs anything, tears become tiny planets of their own. Why astronauts cry and why it matters. Most people imagine space as a place for triumph, discipline, and scientific achievement. But emotional moments come quietly in ways that often surprise astronauts. The first glimpse of Earth rising over the horizon. The loneliness of being so far from home. The stress of long isolation. The exhaustion of endless checklists. The weight of responsibility during spacewalks. The sudden memory of a loved one. The shock of realizing how small humanity looks from above. In the stillness of orbit, emotions have more room to expand like everything else. Thoughts drift unmoored. Feelings that might be kept in a corner of the mind on Earth float to the surface. And when tears arrive, they don't fall, they gather. They cling the way memories cling, the way longing clings, the way the heart even in space clings to Earth. Astronauts speak of a strange phenomenon called the overview effect, a profound shift when seeing Earth from above. You see no borders, no conflicts, no divisions, just a fragile sphere wrapped in clouds and light floating in darkness. Many astronauts admit they cried during that first sight. The tears didn't fall, but the emotion did. The symbolism of crying without falling on Earth. Tears fall and vanish. Gravity pulls them down, hides them, absorbs them. In space they cannot go anywhere. They stay with you until you choose to release them. This gives crying a new symbolism. Tears in space don't hide. They stay on your face, visible, honest, undeniable. Tears in space don't escape. They float until you decide what to do with them. Tears in space don't fall downward. They drift outward like feelings searching for direction. There is something unexpectedly poetic in this, almost metaphoric, as if space, a place of pure physics and pure danger, demands emotional clarity, as if it wants your feelings to float, not sink. Humans carry Earth inside them, its habits, its biology, its expectations. But when you strip away gravity, even sorrow behaves differently. Crying becomes a quiet meditation on adaptation, a reminder that while the body changes, the heart does not. Tears, no matter how they drift, remain human. The universe holds no grudges against emotion. In the silence of orbit surrounded by machinery and stars, tears become gentle companions. They mark the reality that space is not just a technological frontier but a psychological one. Astronauts face isolation, danger, confinement, awe, wonder, profound smallness, and all these experiences stir something deep, something that cannot be measured in telemetry or logged in mission reports. Floating tears are not a failure of composure. They are proof that even here, far from the gravity that shaped us, human emotion still finds a way to rise. In a world where everything drifts, emotions do too, and sometimes in the quiet of a spacecraft orbiting a blue planet, a single tear, free from falling, free from weight, can look like a tiny star reflecting the universe itself. There is no walk on Earth, not along Himalayan cliffs, not inside burning buildings, not across polar ice that compares to stepping outside a spacecraft into open space. An EVA, an extravehicular activity, feels less like a stroll and more like being lowered into the mouth of infinity. From the moment an astronaut moves through the airlock, they are leaving behind the last human-made bubble of safety. On the other side of that hatch is a place so lethal that even the air inside your lungs could kill you if exposed to it. There is no breeze, no ground, no sound, only a vast, unforgiving vacuum stretching in every direction. And yet, astronauts go. They open the door and walk into the void. Because the mission depends on them. Because humanity depends on them. The suit is your skin, your ship, your entire world. A spacesuit is a miracle of engineering. But during an EVA, it also becomes a fragile lifeline. One pin-sized breach, a tear no wider than a thread, can cause internal pressure to plummet. At worst, the astronaut's blood could begin to boil before they even understand what happened. Inside the suit, oxygen is fed through a system that must never clog. Carbon dioxide must be scrubbed constantly. Coolant water circulates to keep the body from overheating. A thin golden visor fends off ultraviolet radiation that could fry eyes in seconds. Outside the suit, space is 120°C in sunlight and 150°C in shadow. The same metal that is burning hot on one panel is freezing on another. Touching the wrong surface can burn or frostbite through multiple gloves. The suit is not clothing. It is a life support system shaped like a person, and during an EVA you trust it completely because you have no choice. Drifting away the fear. No astronaut can ignore. Every astronaut trains for this scenario. Every one of them imagines it at least once. A hand slips, a tether breaks, a push goes the wrong way, and suddenly you're drifting slowly, silently away from the spacecraft. No roar, no scream, no footsteps, just the quiet sensation of sliding away from the only safe place for thousands of kilometers. NASA trains astronauts in huge underwater tanks, but nothing in water captures the terror of drifting, with no water to create drag, no force to slow you down. A single wrong move in microgravity can launch you into emotion you cannot undo. You carry a tiny jetpack, the safer system meant for emergencies. But if you panic, if you waste fuel, if you lose control before you stabilize, it may not be enough. One astronaut once said, "The fear isn't dying. The fear is drifting into forever." It is the quietness of it that haunts you, the silence of a place with no mercy. During a spacewalk, you hear everything through your own body, your breathing, your heartbeat, the hiss of air flowing through tubes, occasionally the crackle of a teammate's voice over comms, but around you, nothing. Sound cannot travel in vacuum. If a meteorite struck a panel behind you, you would not hear it. If a tool slipped and bounced off the hull, you would hear only the faint vibration through your gloves. Astronauts often describe the silence as unnatural, a silence that feels like someone turned the universe off, and yet inside this silence every movement counts. You rehearse every gesture, you tether every tool, you grip every handrail with intention. Training has conditioned you to move like you're underwater, slow, deliberate calm. Because panicking in space is like panicking underwater, the environment does not care if you make mistakes, but it will punish you for them. The dual extremes fire and ice at arm's reach. Some astronauts talk about pressing their gloved hand against a handrail that has spent hours in direct sunlight, feeling the heat pushing through layers of filters, fabrics, and insulation. Moments later, they reach into shadow and feel the opposite, a cold so intense it seems to pull warmth from the bone. The spacewalk becomes a journey through a world of extremes, heat that could boil water, cold that could freeze metal, radiation stronger than any sunny day, shadow sharper than any eclipse, darkness darker than any midnight on Earth. It is a place where even temperature has teeth. When tools become dangerous, every object in space becomes a potential bullet. A wrench that slips from your hand won't fall, it will float, then accelerate. Orbital mechanics can turn a drifting screwdriver into a projectile traveling at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. This is why every tool, every clamp, every camera, every bolt is tied to the suit with a tether. Astronauts keep track of their tools as if they were children. Misplacing one can jeopardize a mission. Losing one can jeopardize the entire station. There is a story of an astronaut who let go of a tool bag during a repair. The moment it drifted away, she whispered, "There it goes," and everyone watched silently as it became its own tiny satellite orbiting Earth for months, a symbol of how unforgiving the environment is. The survival psychology of a spacewalk. Every astronaut experiences a psychological shift during their first EVA. Some describe awe, an overwhelming, almost spiritual sensation of being outside everything they've ever known. Others feel fear, a primal recognition that nothing in human evolution has prepared us for standing in open vacuum. Many say it is both at once. During a spacewalk, the human mind does strange things. Time feels slow. The body feels fragile. The Earth below looks heartbreakingly beautiful. The void above looks infinite and indifferent. It is hard not to think of the long chain of life that led from ancient oceans to this moment, one fragile human tethered to a machine clinging to a handrail above a planet glowing blue and alive. An astronaut once said, "It was the closest I've ever felt to being both alive and dead at the same time." The psychology of survival becomes a blend of focus, fear, and reverence. And still, they go because every spacewalk repairs something essential: a solar panel, a cooling line, a scientific instrument, a future mission, a dream humanity has carried for generations. Astronauts step into danger because the next step in human exploration depends on them. They walk on the edge of death so humanity can walk into tomorrow. An EVA is not just maintenance. It is not simple repair work. It is the most dangerous walk in existence and one of the most courageous acts a human being can perform. The moment you leave Earth, you don't just lose weight, you lose direction. Up and down vanish. Left and right blur. Your body tries to map a world that no longer makes sense. The inner ear, which evolved to measure gravity and motion, suddenly finds itself in a universe without a flaw. And without that silent anchor pulling you downward, your brain must rewrite itself, cell by cell, neuron by neuron, just to help you understand where you are. This is one of the quietest, most intimate challenges of spaceflight, the slow unraveling and rebuilding of orientation itself. The inner ears, a compass that stops working. Inside your skull, in tiny fluid-filled canals, your vestibular system waits for gravity. On Earth, the otolith organs track acceleration and tilt. The semicircular canals track rotation. Fluids shift with movement, telling the brain which way is down. In space, those fluids no longer settle. They float. The tiny hair cells that detect motion have nothing to respond to. Your brain listens for gravity and hears silence. The result is disorientation so profound it borders on surreal. Astronauts describe feeling upside down when they're not, thinking the spacecraft has rotated when only they have, losing track of their own body position, feeling like they're tumbling while perfectly still. Your senses disagree with each other. Your eyes say one thing, your inner ear says nothing. Your brain, confused, fills the gap with dizziness. This is why space adaptation syndrome space nausea affects about half of all astronauts during the first 3 days. It feels like seasickness, except the sea is inside your skull. Floating. Illusions when the body becomes a ghost. Floating sounds peaceful, but the loss of orientation can produce strange illusions. Some astronauts feel like they're drifting upward even when tethered. Others feel as if the station is rotating under them. Some even grip handrails tightly, not from danger but from the phantom sensation that they're sliding away. In the early days of the space age, astronauts reported startling illusions, thinking the ceiling had become the floor, feeling their own limbs disappear, believing they were spinning despite being still, opening their eyes during sleep and not knowing which way their body faced. Without gravity, your body becomes a question mark. The human brain must answer it through guesswork, and sometimes those guesses are wild. The slow rewiring of the astronaut mind. After a few days, the brain begins adapting. Neurons start ignoring signals from the inner ear and rely more heavily on visual cues, pattern recognition, spatial memory, proprioception, body awareness. This neuroplasticity is astonishing proof that the human brain is not only resilient but deeply creative. Over time, floating feels normal. Direction becomes relative. Up becomes whatever your eyes decide it is. The ISS interior becomes a 3D maze that your mind maps instinctively. Veteran astronauts move through the station like dancers, fluid, precise, almost elegant. Their brains have learned to navigate without gravity, replacing instinct with new mental algorithms. Your map of reality becomes a self-generated coordinate system, not dependent on the planet you left. What happens when you come home, but when astronauts return to Earth, the rewired brain suddenly becomes maladapted? Gravity feels heavy. Walking feels strange. Balance is unreliable. Some describe standing up and instantly tipping sideways. Others say their legs feel like untrained strangers attached to their bodies. The inner ear, suddenly flooded with signals, must renegotiate its role. Scientists call this readaptation, but astronauts call it learning how to be human again. Even after landing, some feel phantom floating sensations. A few wake up in bed and instinctively reach for a non-existent wall tether. Gravity becomes something you must relearn, like a forgotten language. What is home without up or down? As orientation dissolves in space, so does the emotional meaning of direction. On Earth, up is the sky. Down is the ground. Home is a place you return toward connected by gravity. But in space, home becomes something else. It is no longer down there. It is simply there. A glowing sphere suspended in a black ocean, visible from any angle. Astronauts report a deep shift in perception. Home is not beneath you. Home is everywhere you look, a fragile world turning silently in the void. Without gravity, Earth becomes less a location and more a presence, a companion, a memory, a promise. Up and down lose meaning, but belonging does not. The emotional orientation of a human being. Perhaps the most beautiful transformation is not neurological but emotional. With no physical orientation, you build a psychological one. Familiar modules become your north. Your crewmates become your anchor points. Rituals, meals, jokes, shared tasks create structure. The view of Earth becomes your internal compass. In this weightless world, your sense of home stops pointing downward and begins pointing inward. You learn that orientation comes not from gravity but from connection, not from direction but from meaning. You float, but you are not lost. You drift, but you are not without purpose. Space strips away up and down, and in doing so reveals what truly keeps a person steady. There is a danger in space that makes no sound, casts no shadow, and leaves no wound you can see. It slips through metal, through flesh, through DNA itself. It is always there, persistent, patient, and impossible to outrun. This is the radiation of space cosmic rays from ancient supernova solar particles hurled outward by flares and high-energy ions, traveling so fast they can slice through living cells like microscopic bullets. On Earth, you never feel them. You live inside a protective cocoon, but leave that cocoon even for a moment and you meet an enemy older than life. Earth's magnetosphere, the invisible shield. We never thank, long before humans existed. Earth forged a magnetic shield. Its molten core churns like a cosmic dynamo, generating a vast magnetic field that balloons outward, forming the magnetosphere, a protective bubble thousands of kilometers wide. Every second, solar wind particles slam into it. Cosmic rays try to pierce it. High-energy protons churn around its edges, and every second the magnetosphere deflects them, bends them, slows them, catches them. It works so well that life evolved without needing natural armor. We have no shells, no radiation-resistant skin, no biological shielding, because we never needed it. Earth did the job for us. But the moment you leave this invisible fortress, you discover how naked you truly are. DNA under attack. Radiation doesn't simply hit you, it penetrates you. Cosmic rays are not just photons, they are heavy ions, moving at near-light speed. Oxygen, nuclei, iron nuclei, carbon nuclei, all stripped of electrons, all electrically savage. When these particles pass through the human body, they don't bounce off. They punch through, tearing through DNA, creating double-strand breaks, damaging cell membranes, disrupting protein structures, triggering mutations. On Earth, such damage is rare and usually repaired quickly. In space, the repair system becomes overwhelmed. 6 months in orbit exposes astronauts to radiation doses comparable to hundreds of chest X-rays. A trip to Mars would expose them to far more, potentially enough to raise lifetime cancer risks significantly. And worse, cosmic rays cause secondary radiation when they strike spacecraft walls, creating showers of smaller particles that scatter through the body like sparks. Radiation is not a single enemy, it is an entire army. Solar fury. When the sun goes to war, the sun is not quiet. It breathes, it pulses, it erupts. Sometimes it releases solar flares explosions so powerful they can send waves of high-energy particles toward Earth at astonishing speeds. These events can overwhelm spacecraft electronics, knock out communication, pose immediate danger to astronauts outside the station. On Earth, the atmosphere and magnetosphere absorb the impact. In orbit, astronauts rely only on metal walls a few centimeters thick. A major solar storm during an EVA could be catastrophic. Astronauts would have minutes, sometimes seconds, to retreat to a shielded module. On long missions far from Earth, that option may not exist. A Mars-bound crew would be exposed to the sun's moods with no quick shelter, no magnetic shield larger than their spacecraft, and no way to hide. The danger is not theoretical. During Apollo missions, a major solar flare occurred between Apollo 16 and 17. Had astronauts been on the lunar surface during that event, they would have absorbed lethal radiation. Space is beautiful. It is also ruthless. Why shielding is so hard on Earth? Shielding is simple lead concrete layers of dense material. In space, those solutions create new problems. Heavy shielding increases launch mass dramatically. Dense materials generate secondary radiation when struck. Thick walls reduce payload capacity and maneuverability. Radiation, the very thing we want to block, gains strength when it hits the wrong material. This is why shielding spacecraft is an engineering nightmare. The station uses aluminum. Some modules add water or polyethylene layers around sleeping quarters, because hydrogen-rich materials absorb some types of radiation better. But cosmic rays remain a persistent adversary, too energetic, too rarefied, too unpredictable. No current spacecraft can fully protect against them. Humanity is venturing into an environment designed for particles, not people. The future, how we survive deep space. If humans hope to travel to Mars, live on the Moon, or build habitats far beyond Earth's magnetic cradle, radiation solutions must evolve. Engineers and scientists imagine several possibilities. 1. Water walls. Water absorbs radiation well. Some designs use tanks of water lining the crew compartment, dual-purpose shielding, that also supplies drinking water and oxygen generation. 2. Hydrogen-rich plastics. Lightweight materials like polyethylene block some particles more effectively than metal without producing as many secondary fragments. 3. Active magnetic shields. Imagine a miniature magnetosphere surrounding the spacecraft generated by superconducting coils. This idea is powerful but extremely energy-intensive. 4. Underground Martian habitats. Mars has no global magnetic field, so colonists may live in lava tubes, caves, underground shelters, habitats covered in regolith. The soil itself becomes a radiation shield. 5. Pharmaceuticals for DNA repair. Some researchers explore drugs or gene-based therapies that enhance the body's ability to repair radiation damage, using lessons from extremophiles like tardigrades. These solutions are prototypes, concepts, dreams. But so was Flight 1's. So was space. Humanity has a long history of confronting the impossible and engineering its way through, the emotional reality of an invisible threat. Astrophysicists measure radiation in sieverts, engineers measure shielding in centimeters, mission planners measure risks in numerical models. But astronauts feel it differently. They describe it as a hum you cannot hear, a shadow that follows you, a danger you can't see, only trust you're protected from. Some have reported seeing flashes of light when they close their eyes, cosmic rays striking their retinas. A reminder that the universe is not empty but full of motion and energy that never stops. The danger becomes part of the background of life, never overwhelming but never absent. A quiet companion. A final thought, the cost of leaving our world. When you leave Earth, you leave behind more than gravity. You leave the shield that guarded your ancestors, your DNA, your evolution. Radiation is the toll for stepping into the cosmic ocean. It asks a price of every astronaut, every mission, every dream of living beyond the blue sky. But we pay it anyway, because the story of humanity has always been the story of leaving safe places to find new ones, and the stars, dangerous as they are, still call to us, still pull us outward, still promise a future worth the risk. Fire is one of humanity's oldest companions, warmth, danger, light transformation. But when you remove gravity, fire becomes something else entirely. It stops behaving like the living, breathing creature we know. It becomes alien. On Earth, flames rise. They dance upward in orange tongues fed by convection, the hot air rushing away from the source, the cooler air rushing in to replace it. Smoke curls upward. Heat climbs. Fire has direction. In space, fire has none. It becomes a blue floating orb, silent, symmetrical, and strangely beautiful. A flame that does not reach for the sky because there is no up. The blue spheres that burn in all directions. Without gravity, hot air does not rise. Cool air does not fall. There is no convection, no upward draft, no flicker, no flame shape. Instead, fire forms a perfect sphere, a glowing bubble of chemistry suspended in place. These weightless flames are blue, not orange, cooler burning at lower temperatures, spherical spreading outward evenly, slower consuming fuel gently, silent with no roaring upward motion. They resemble something biological, like a tiny pulsating jellyfish made of light. Scientists studying them on the ISS describe them as ghost flames, so subtle that instrument sensors often detect them before the human eye can. A combustion researcher once said, "It doesn't look like fire anymore. It looks like a dream of fire." Why fire changes color and shape. In space. On Earth, flames burn orange because incomplete combustion creates glowing soot particles. Rising hot gases shape the flame into that teardrop form we instantly recognize. In microgravity, there is no rising airflow to pull oxygen in. Oxygen diffuses slowly toward the flame. Combustion becomes more complete. Less soot forms. The flame turns blue, pure, clean, steady. It is a kind of fire Earth rarely sees. Without gravity, flames stop being wild. They become calm, patient, almost gentle. But this gentleness is deceptive. The danger of fire that doesn't reveal itself on Earth, flames roar upward. Smoke rises as a warning. Heat builds in one direction. In space, smoke does not rise. Heat does not drift upward. The flame does not flicker or brighten. Oxygen-rich pockets can develop silently. A fire can burn invisibly, spreading without light or smoke. It can cling to surfaces in slow-moving waves. It can hide inside equipment. It can grow outward in a perfect sphere with no obvious motion. Even the smell of smoke dissipates differently, spreading evenly rather than rising. This makes detecting fires one of the most urgent engineering challenges in space missions. Detection systems rely on fine particle sensors, thermal sensors, and air chemistry monitors, because the eye alone cannot be trusted. Fire loses its drama in space, but not its danger. The physics of a flame with no place to go. Fire burns by feeding on oxygen, but without convection to bring new oxygen into the flame, the air around it grows depleted. The flame slowly suffocates itself. This creates an eerie cycle. The flame consumes the oxygen nearby. It shrinks. Fresh oxygen diffuses in slowly. The flame grows again, a living rhythm, a breathing sphere of chemistry. Some experiments found cool flames, fires so faint they don't glow visibly, at all burning fuel chemically at temperatures far below normal flames. These cool flames can reignite suddenly, when fuel or oxygen conditions change. In space, fire becomes a puzzle, an organism, a silent experiment with no instinctive cues, the history of fire incidents in space. Fire has always been one of the most feared hazards on spacecraft, because in a sealed environment with limited oxygen, no escape and delicate equipment, even a small flame can become catastrophic. Apollo 1, 1967, the tragedy on the launch pad. The deadliest fire in the history of spaceflight didn't occur in orbit, but during a ground test. A spark in a pure oxygen environment caused a flash fire that killed all 3 astronauts, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, in seconds. This tragedy changed spacecraft design forever. Mir Space Station, 1997, the oxygen candle fire. On the Russian station, Mir, a malfunctioning oxygen generator, caught fire, producing a 1-meter jet of flame. Astronauts fought it for 14 minutes an eternity in a sealed spacecraft before regaining control. The flame didn't rise. It shot straight outward, a blowtorch in zero gravity. Smoke filled the cabin evenly, making it impossible to see or breathe without masks. The event remains one of the most terrifying near disasters in orbital history. ISS, small incidents. Several minor smoldering or overheating incidents have occurred: battery packs, electrical connectors, clogged air filters. None created large flames, but all reveal the same truth. In space, even a smoldering wire is a serious threat. How astronauts train for fire that defies instinct. Astronauts practice sealing off compartments, isolating airflow, turning off electrical systems, using special foam or extinguishers designed for microgravity. Because traditional extinguishers spraying powder or gas behave unpredictably in 0G. Fluids form blobs, gases diffuse slowly. Extinguishing a fire becomes a dance with physics. The goal is not to smother a rising flame, it is to choke a drifting sphere. The strange beauty of a dangerous thing. There is something profoundly enchanting about the way fire behaves in space, like watching a familiar animal adopt a new shape. It is mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. Yet astronauts know the truth: fire is never just beautiful. It is the one enemy on the station that can kill everyone before a single alarm sounds. A glowing blue orb floating beside wiring is not art. It is a warning. In microgravity, fire becomes a lesson. Without gravity, even danger behaves differently. Even destruction becomes weightless. Even the familiar must be relearned. And as astronauts study these strange drifting flames, they discover a deeper truth. Space does not care what humans expect. It does not imitate Earth. It rewrites every rule. Even fire must learn to float. In space, exercise is not a hobby, not a luxury, not something you can skip because you're tired or busy. It is survival. Every hour spent floating in microgravity quietly erodes the body. Muscles shrink. Bones dissolve. The heart relaxes too much. The entire architecture of the human form built for the tug of Earth begins to unwind. And so astronauts follow a strict ritual carved into the daily schedule with the same seriousness as oxygen checks or navigation readings. 2 hours of exercise. Every single day. No exceptions. Miss a session and the body pays immediately. The machines that fight against weightless decay. Inside the ISS, exercise machines look familiar at first glance: treadmill cycles, and something that resembles a weight rack. But look closer. None of these machines use weight. There is no gravity to pull anything downward. Instead, the station uses machines that create artificial resistance: vacuum cylinders, elastic forces, flywheels, bungee tethers, anything to simulate the pressure Earth once provided for free. The 3 guardians of crew health. 1. AIRD. The Advanced Resistive Exercise Device. The backbone of astronaut strength, AIRD is the closest thing to a gym in orbit. It uses vacuum pistons to mimic weights up to 270 kilograms, 600 lebs of resistance. When an astronaut squats on AIRD, they aren't lifting anything because nothing weighs anything, but they are pushing against force. With AIRD, they can squat, deadlift, bench press, perform rows, shoulder press, mimic almost any major Earth exercise. It is not about building muscle. It is about not losing it. Because in orbit, the body disassembles strength the way a desert erases footprints. 2. T2. The treadmill. That pulls you down. Running in space is not running. The treadmill doesn't hold you to its surface. If you stepped on it freely, you would just drift. To run, astronauts strap themselves down with spring-loaded harnesses that simulate body weight. They bounce awkwardly as the harness pulls downward each step, an effort to remind their legs that walking exists. It is uncomfortable. It digs into the shoulders, it limits stride length. But it saves bones from dissolving. It keeps hips and spines from collapsing into frailty. The T2 is therapy disguised as cardio. 3. Sevis, the floating bicycle. This is a stationary bike with no seat. Why no seat? Because your body doesn't sit in microgravity, it floats. Pedaling on Sevis strengthens cardiovascular endurance and leg muscles without needing gravity to anchor posture. It is often the first thing astronauts do when recovering from space adaptation syndrome because it is gentle, familiar, rhythmic. The cost of stopping. Without exercise, the consequences are brutal. 20% muscle loss in weeks, 1 to 2% bone density loss per month, spine weakness, reduced balance, cardiac atrophy where the heart literally shrinks, orthostatic intolerance, difficulty standing upon return, increased fracture risks, blood pooling in the head, metabolic changes resembling premature aging. Long-term exposure without countermeasures would leave a person too weak to stand, too fragile to function on Earth or any other surface. Microgravity is not gentle. It dissolves the human blueprint like sugar in water, the heart that forgets its purpose. Gravity forces the heart to pump blood upward. Remove gravity and the heart can relax too much. Over time, cardiac muscle mass decreases. Astronauts returning home often feel faint when standing. Their heart untrained for gravity lags behind. Blood pressure drops. Vision fades. Some collapse. It is a rebirth into weight, and it is painful. NASA monitors astronauts like cardiac patients, not because they are ill, but because they are living in an environment the body interprets as illness. The routine, a daily negotiation with gravity exercise, is woven into the structure of time on the ISS strength training in the morning, cardio in the evening, monitoring of pulse blood pressure and hydration, continuous evaluation of bone density. Every session is meticulously logged, not for vanity, for survival data. Astronauts finish drenched in sweat which does not drip but clings to the skin, forming floating droplets that must be wiped away before they drift into electronics. Their hearts pound, their limbs tremble, their breathing echoes inside their helmets or headsets. For 2 hours a day they pretend gravity still exists. The future. We will need gravity we can build if humanity wants to travel to Mars, live on the Moon, build orbital habitats, journey to the outer planets, create multi-year missions. Exercise alone will not be enough. We need a deeper answer: artificial gravity. A spacecraft that spins creating centrifugal force could mimic the pull of Earth. Science fiction shows it often. Reality has yet to catch up. There are enormous challenges engineering rotating structures in microgravity, preventing dizziness and nausea, maintaining stable rotational speed, avoiding Coriolis forces that distort motion, integrating living quarters with rotating modules, yet the idea refuses to die. Because it is perhaps the only way humans can thrive, not just survive far from Earth. Even Mars, with its 38% gravity, may not be enough to maintain human physiology for years or generations. A future Martian settlement may require rotating habitats, centrifuge sleeping pods, gravity therapy rooms. Imagine children born on Mars. Will their bones grow differently? Will their hearts become weaker? Will Earth's gravity become impossible for them? Exercise alone cannot answer these questions. Gravity or a substitute for it must be engineered. The human body is a memory of Earth. Every muscle contraction, every heartbeat, every bone cell is tuned to a force that once shaped oceans and mountains. In space, astronauts are far from that force, and their bodies know it. So they exercise, pushing against machines that mimic a planet they left behind. They fight to preserve a biology that evolved under blue skies and rain and soil and mountains. The message written into every training session is simple. Without gravity you fade. Without effort you vanish. And yet humans persist, lifting, running, pedaling, in a place where nothing weighs anything, carrying the memory of Earth inside their muscles, keeping gravity alive in the one place it does not exist. In space, metal behaves like it remembers something ancient, a truth hidden by Earth's air, water, dust and oxidation, a truth we never see on the ground. When two clean pieces of metal touch in a vacuum, something remarkable and dangerous can happen. They weld themselves together. No flame, no heat, no spark, just contact. This quiet phenomenon called cold welding is one of the most counterintuitive hazards of the space environment. It turns hinges into prisons, tools into traps, and moving parts into fused immovable lumps of metal. In orbit, metal becomes almost too honest for its own good. The secret metal atoms don't know they're separate on Earth. Every metal surface is coated with a microscopically thin layer of oxide, an invisible film born from constant exposure to air. Oxygen, water, vapor and dust settle instantly, creating a boundary between objects even when they appear clean. But in the vacuum of space there is no oxygen, no moisture, no contamination, no protective film. Metal surfaces come together bare their atomic lattices naked, and the atoms, they don't know they belong to different objects. They simply join. To them, two surfaces become one continuous piece of metal, a seamless molecular handshake that cannot be undone by force alone. This is cold welding contact so intimate that the distinction between objects vanishes at the atomic level. Why this is a problem for satellites. Cold welding might sound like a novelty, a curiosity from metallurgy textbooks. In space, it is a menace. Every satellite, spacecraft and station is filled with moving parts, hinges, latches, gyroscopes, robotic arms, docking mechanisms, valves, connectors, bolt faces, switches. All can seize if their surfaces touch too cleanly for too long. A stuck latch can cripple a solar panel, a seized valve can threaten life support, a frozen joint can doom a docking attempt, a fused bolt can ruin a repair mission. Even tiny stuck components can compromise billion-dollar systems. The European Space Agency once documented over 20 incidents of cold welding in orbit, some resulting in mission-threatening malfunctions. In the early days of spaceflight, Soviet satellites suffered failures when moving parts fused under vacuum. Engineers learned quickly, space is not a gentle lab, it is a tribological battlefield. Tribology, the science of rubbing friction and failure. Tribology, an unglamorous but vital field studies friction, lubrication and wear. In space, tribology becomes sacred knowledge. Without air, lubricants evaporate. Grease outgasses. Oils degrade under radiation. Surfaces become dangerously clean. Mechanical motion becomes a high-stakes gamble. When two surfaces slide against each other in vacuum, the lack of protective films means higher friction, faster wear, potential welding, more metal particles created, more abrasion, more cascading damage. Metal in vacuum behaves like an animal waking from hibernation, hungry, reactive, unpredictable. Astronauts must trust that engineers remembered every coating, every lubricant, every surface preparation. Every detail matters. The physics of a cosmic vacuum, why space encourages welding. Earth prevents cold welding through constant chemical contamination. Space strips all of that away. A vacuum does three key things. 1. Removes oxides. Without oxygen, metal surfaces remain atomically pure. 2. Removes adsorbed water. No moisture. No molecular cushioning layer. 3. Prevents new contamination. No dust, no air molecules, no thin films. In this sterilized environment, metal behaves the way it wants to in ideal laboratory conditions, only more extremely. The vacuum doesn't merely allow cold welding, it encourages it. How engineers stop metal from fusing itself. Preventing cold welding is one of the unsung triumphs of spacecraft design. Engineers use anodizing, creating a protective oxide layer that can't be stripped away. Coatings, gold Teflon or nitrides are added to reduce adhesion. Lubricants, special space-grade greases that resist evaporation and radiation. Texturing, roughening surfaces so contacts occur only at tiny points. Material pairing, choosing metals that don't cold weld easily when touching. Dry lubricants like molybdenum disulfide or graphite surviving where oil would vanish. Every hinge, latch and bolt is a small masterpiece of this science. Every moving part is designed not just to move, but to resist becoming permanently still. The human side. When equipment gets stuck in space, astronauts have stories about stubborn equipment hatches that won't open, bolts that resist torque, hinges that feel locked. Often the culprit is micro-welding, tiny areas where cold welding has partially fused surfaces. One astronaut described trying to loosen a tool during an EVA. It felt like the space station itself was holding onto it. Another recalled a handrail that had fused at one end. No force I applied mattered. It was like trying to break a promise made by metal. Sometimes the solution is elbow grease. Sometimes a special tool. Sometimes engineers quietly redesign the next generation hardware. Space teaches humility in the smallest details. Cold welding and the future of humanity in space as we build lunar habitats, Martian outposts, deep space stations, rotating habitats, asteroid mining machinery, interplanetary craft. The challenge grows. Any long-duration system with mechanical motion must reckon with the vacuum's hunger for clean surfaces. Machines that survive decades must resist a phenomenon that can happen silently in seconds. Future designs may require self-maintaining lubrication systems, metamaterials engineered to resist atomic bonding, robotics that avoid metal-to-metal contact, artificial atmospheres around moving components, magnetic or fluid bearings that eliminate direct contact. Cold welding is not just a problem of engineering, it is a reminder. In space, even metal remembers it came from stars, and when the rules of Earth fall away, it returns to its original instincts. A final reflection. When silence makes metal too honest. Cold welding is the quietest hazard in space. No flame, no noise, no warning. Just atoms deciding to merge as if they were never meant to be apart. It is a small story with big consequences, a microscopic embrace that can sabotage satellites, lock mechanisms, and threaten missions. In the silence of the cosmic vacuum, metal reveals a truth. Produce perfect conditions and even solid objects seek unity. A paradox. Space is empty, yet it makes metals cling more tightly than ever. A reminder that beyond gravity, beyond atmosphere, beyond Earth, everything changes, even the way matter holds itself together. Taste is one of the quiet joys of being human, but in space, even joy must negotiate with physics. Astronauts quickly discover something unexpected. Foods that taste vivid and comforting on Earth often taste muted, distant, even disappointing in orbit. Not because the recipes change, not because the ingredients are different, but because they do. Or rather, we do. In microgravity, the human body becomes a strange floating laboratory. Blood shifts, fluids redistribute, the sinuses swell. Taste isn't just altered, it's transformed. The slow fading of flavor. Soon after arriving in space, astronauts notice a sensation almost everyone describes the same way. It feels like having a mild cold. Without gravity pulling fluids downward, more blood stays in the head. The face puffs, the tongue swells slightly, the nasal passages become congested, and because flavor is not just taste but smell, up to 80% of it, congestion dulls everything. Salt tastes flat, bread tastes bland, fruit tastes muted, savory dishes lose their depth. Meals that once evoked memories now feel like photocopies of themselves. This isn't a failure of the food, it's the absence of gravity. Taste on Earth is a conversation between the tongue and nose. In space, the nose speaks in a whisper. Why flavor collapses without gravity. Taste relies heavily on volatile molecules reaching the olfactory receptors in the nose. Gravity helps move those molecules as you chew, swallow, and inhale. In microgravity, aromas don't drift upward. Nasal airflow is reduced. The brain gets a weaker signal. Flavor becomes flat. Your tongue can still detect basic tastes, sweet, salty, bitter, sour, umami, but the richness of food fades. It's as though the world has been turned down from stereo to mono. The craving for fire spice. As a solution to compensate, astronauts reach for bold flavors. Not mild, not subtle, intense. Hot sauces empty quickly. Sriracha becomes sacred. Barbecue sauce disappears fast. Horseradish and mustard move in with surprising importance. Spicy foods engage receptors on the tongue that detect pain and heat, not smell, so they bypass the muted olfactory system. For astronauts, it's not the heat they want, it's the sensation. A dish that would taste overpowering on Earth becomes perfect in orbit. One astronaut joked, in space we all become chili lovers. Another said, you don't want flavor, you want impact. The weird role of texture. With taste dulled, astronauts rely more on texture. Crisp, chewy, crunchy foods deliver satisfaction not through flavor, but through feel. Yet microgravity complicates even this. Crunchy foods make crumbs dangerous in the ISS. Sticky foods drift if not secured. Popping textures scatter droplets. So engineers carefully choose space-safe, crispy foods, granola bars that crumble, minimally dehydrated snacks that can be eaten directly, tortillas, instead of bread to avoid crumbs. Texture becomes both pleasure and engineering constraint. The smell-taste relationship in space, smell anchors taste. Without it, the world of flavor collapses into simple chemical categories. Astronauts notice coffee smells weak, fruit smells faint, chocolate tastes like sugar and nothing else. Food becomes functional fuel, not experience. On Earth, your brain paints flavor with aroma. In orbit, the palate is missing half its colors. This loss is more emotional than people expect. Cuisine is memory. Memory is comfort. Comfort is stability, and stability matters in the loneliness of space. The psychology of flavor, far from home. When flavor fades, astronauts miss things deeply: the smell of garlic in a pan, the aroma of fresh bread, the spices of childhood, the warmth of home-cooked meals. Food becomes tied to identity and belonging. When it fades, so does a small part of emotional grounding. This is why mission planners now consider food a psychological pillar, just as important as exercise or communication with Earth. A good meal in orbit can lift spirits, ease stress, and anchor the mind. A bland one can amplify loneliness. The future cooking beyond Earth as humanity plans lunar bases, Martian settlements, orbital habitats, multi-year journeys to the outer solar system. The question becomes, what will food taste like far from Earth? And how will future humans reclaim the flavors we depend on? Possible solutions include 1. Smell amplifying cooking methods. Heating spices in controlled environments so aromas don't drift hazardously. 2. Pressurized kitchen compartments, allowing conventional aromas and steam without risking contamination. 3. Artificial gravity dining modules, because smell and taste work better when fluids drain properly. 4. Enhanced space. Cuisine foods designed with concentrated flavors, layered spices, bold umami, aromatic oils encapsulated until chewing. 5. Agricultural modules. Growing fresh herbs, vegetables and fruits to restore real flavor: basil, cilantro, tomatoes, peppers, green onions. Even tiny harvests deliver massive emotional comfort. 6. Personalized nutrition software, adaptive menus based on biological responses and sensory feedback. Culinary challenges for future colonies. Mars settlers will face thin atmosphere, lower pressure, altered boiling points, different aroma diffusion, weaker gravity that still reduces flavor. The need for radiation-safe food production. Cooking will become chemistry. Flavors will require engineering. Spices will become treasured. Every meal on Mars will be a negotiation with physics. And yet humanity will learn, adapt, and recreate the flavors of home, because we need taste as much as we need oxygen. A final thought. Flavor is a memory of Earth in orbit. Every bite reminds astronauts of the planet. They left a place rich in aromas, spices, warmth, and comfort. Taste becomes a message from home, a sensory tether to gravity, soil, culture, and family. And even when taste fades, the longing for it does not. Humans will carry that longing into every spacecraft, every lunar habitat, every Martian greenhouse. Because no matter how far we drift from Earth, we will always crave the flavors that shaped us. Your first day in space is not heroic. It is not glorious. It is not a cinematic moment of triumph. It is very often spent fighting nausea. For all our engineering, for all our courage, for all our dreams of the stars, the human body begins spaceflight the same way it begins a bout of seasickness, confused, overwhelmed, and desperately trying to understand why the world no longer matches its expectations. This is space adaptation syndrome, better known as space sickness, and it affects nearly half of all astronauts. But the truth behind it is deeper than nausea. It is the story of the brain being forced to unlearn gravity. The root cause: sensory mutiny. On Earth, your senses agree. Your eyes see a horizon, your ear canal sense up and down, your muscles feel your weight, your skin senses pressure against chair floor bed. In space, they stop agreeing. Your eyes say, you're upright. Your inner ear says you're tumbling in slow motion. Your muscles say you weigh nothing. Your brain says something is wrong. Prepare to vomit. You enter sensory civil war. The brain interprets this mismatch the same way it would interpret poisoning, the evolutionary trigger that has saved mammals for millions of years, and so it tries to help. By making you sick. The physiology of disorientation. The vestibular system in the inner ear uses fluid-filled canals to sense rotation and gravity. In microgravity, those fluids float freely. The hair cells that read them fire chaotic signals. Meanwhile, blood rushes upward into the head. The sinuses swell. The face puffs. The body interprets these as abnormal. The result feels like seasickness, car sickness, and vertigo layered together: nausea, headache, dizziness, loss of appetite, delayed reactions, cold sweats, disorientation, fatigue. One astronaut described it as like my brain was floating 3 seconds behind my body. Another joked I felt like I'd been spun in a washing machine full of marshmallows. The great unlearning. What makes space sickness remarkable is not the discomfort, it's the reversal. Instead of learning something new, your brain must unlearn something ancient, the idea that down exists. On Earth, this idea is so deeply wired that it feels instinctive. In space, that instinct becomes an obstacle, but human brains are astonishingly plastic. Within hours, sometimes days, the neural circuits begin to adapt. The visual system takes over spatial control. The vestibular system is largely ignored. New reference frames are built based on spacecraft orientation. Up and down become mental choices, not physical constants. This adaptation is called vestibular reinterpretation, and it marks the moment the astronaut brain finally stops fighting reality. One astronaut said, "The day I stopped trying to find the floor was the day I became comfortable in space." Another, "It's like your body finally sighs and says, okay, fine, we float now." The timeline of adaptation, every astronaut is different, but the general pattern is clear. First 12 hours, dizziness, nausea. Difficulty focusing, floating illusions. Appetite loss. Days 2-3, nausea fades. Brain begins suppressing vestibular signals. Movement becomes smoother. Days 4-7, new spatial maps form. Floating becomes efficient. Body stops fighting motion. After 1-2 weeks, astronauts become experts at 3D movement. The ISS becomes a playground rather than an obstacle. Spatial disorientation becomes rare. The unlearning becomes complete. The emotional side of space sickness. The first days in orbit can be emotionally intense frustration, embarrassment, fear of performing poorly, guilt at being sick on the job. Some astronauts hide their discomfort, others joke about it. But all of them quickly realize that space sickness is not a weakness, it is a biological rite of passage. One veteran astronaut said, "It's baptism by nausea." Another, more poetic, "Your body resists space at first. Then one day it surrenders and you become a creature of the air." The return to Earth. The second sickness. Just when astronauts master weightlessness, they return home. And Earth hits harder than expected. Gravity feels heavy. Balance feels unreliable. Legs feel weak. Standing causes dizziness. Some feel seasick on solid ground. Your brain must relearn gravity just as painfully as it unlearned it. Several astronauts say landing day is harder than launch day. One described it as being glued to the floor while your head spins like a compass with no north. A final thought. Adaptation is the human superpower. Space sickness is not failure. It is the cost of stepping outside the environment evolution crafted for us. Every astronaut who floats through nausea into mastery embodies a simple truth. Humans are adaptable beyond imagination. We can unlearn gravity itself. We can become creatures of space, and the great unlearning is only the beginning. Soon, generations may grow up on the Moon or Mars, their bodies shaped by worlds not our own. What we call space sickness today may someday become a childhood milestone, a moment when a young settler's brain releases Earth's last grip and embraces a new way of being. On Earth, shooting stars are gentle illusions, brief streaks of light burning safely dozens of kilometers overhead. You make a wish. You watch them fade. You feel wonder, not fear. In space shooting, stars are not distant. They are not harmless. They do not burn up before they reach you. In space shooting, stars hit your home, your spacecraft, your station, your metal cocoon holding back the vacuum. Astronauts have heard tiny impacts, soft ticks, faint pings, sounds that should be impossible in a vacuum, but travel through the hull as vibrations. They have seen flashes against the external cameras. They have inspected the station for tiny craters gouged by particles smaller than grains of sand. This is the strange reality of orbit. The danger that streaks beautifully across Earth's night sky above you becomes a weapon when you share its altitude. Micrometeorites, bullets made of ancient stars. These particles have travelled for millions, sometimes billions of years. They come from shattered asteroids, comet trails, planetary collisions, interstellar dust, the leftovers of solar system formation. Most are the size of sand grains, some are the size of beads, a few are the size of pebbles. But even a grain of sand travelling at up to 70 kilometers per second hits with more force than a rifle bullet. There is no warning, no flash, just impact. A micrometeorite does not knock politely. It punches, it vaporizes, it tears. Astronaut Don Pettit described watching a tiny flash outside the station, a brief sparkle on the hull, the birth of a crater only millimeters wide but deep enough to remind everyone how thin the line between safety and catastrophe really is. The wool scar tissue of the cosmic wind. Look closely at the exterior of the ISS. It is covered in pit dents and tiny craters left by unending impacts. This is orbital sandblasting. Spacecraft live in a constant storm of natural micrometeorites. Artificial debris. Dust from old rocket stages. Paint flecks from 1960s satellites. Frozen droplets of coolant. Fragments smaller than a fingernail. Each is harmless alone. Collectively, they become a rain of needles. The outer layers of the station are designed for this Whipple shielding. Multiple metal layers, Kevlar-like fabrics, ceramic composites. When a particle hits the outer layer, it shatters into a cloud of plasma, and fragments losing energy before it reaches the inner wall. Most impacts are stopped. Most. Astronauts check for new scars regularly. Sometimes they find fresh ones, sharp-edged pits that weren't there the day before. Each crater is a reminder that the Earth below protects life not by accident but by force of atmosphere. Above that atmosphere, protection must be engineered. The flashes. You can sometimes see against the black canvas of space cameras, sometimes catch tiny flashes, brief sparks as micrometeorites strike solar panels or external structures. They are not explosions. They are particles hitting metal at hypervelocity, releasing energy in a tiny burst of light. A shooting star outside your window, a reminder you're living inside the meteors, not beneath them. Astronauts who witness these flashes often describe them as surreal, like the universe was flicking sand at us, a spark then nothing, beautiful but unsettling. Artificial debris, the other rain of metal. Natural micrometeorites are only half the story. Humanity has created its own danger-spent rocket bodies, flecks of titanium paint, shattered satellites, lost tools, screws, insulation fragments, bolts, split solar panel pieces. Over 30,000 tracked objects orbit Earth. But that is only what is big enough to monitor. Millions of particles the size of grains of sand cannot be tracked, cannot be avoided, cannot be predicted. Even the ISS cupola window beloved for Earth views has a protective shutter because a single untracked bolt could smash it. Space is a museum of our mistakes. How NASA maps a sky full of bullets. NASA and other space agencies maintain vast tracking networks, radar arrays, optical telescopes, ground-based laser systems, space-based sensors. They monitor everything larger than about 10 centimeters. Warning alerts are issued when debris threatens orbiting spacecraft. The ISS sometimes performs debris avoidance, burns small engine adjustments to shift its orbit slightly passing ahead, or behind a dangerous object by tiny but life-saving margins. But the smallest particles, they are untrackable. They are everywhere, and they strike at random. Astronauts live with this uncertainty the way sailors live with the ocean. Cosmic dust, the Earth's constant visitor. Every day, 100 to 300 tons of cosmic dust falls onto Earth. Tiny particles drift downward through the atmosphere and burn up invisibly. On the ground, we are showered constantly with microscopic grains of asteroid and comet material. In orbit, these grains are not gentle. They are fast. They are unfiltered. They are older than humanity. Each one is a piece of the universe's long memory, a fragment of rocks that shattered before Earth formed, a relic from the dawn of the solar system. To astronauts, these particles are both threat and wonder, the human feeling of living inside a meteor shower. Imagine living on a fragile metal shell, thin walls between you and vacuum while ancient particles strike your home with invisible fists. You don't see them coming, you don't hear them until they hit. You trust the engineering, you trust the shielding, you trust that probability is on your side. But you never forget that space is not empty. It is full of motion, full of debris, full of relics from millions of orbits ago. Astronauts often express a quiet philosophical awe. Earth protects us more than we ever realized. Up here, shooting stars don't fall, they collide. Space looks silent, but it is full of impacts. Living in space teaches you humility, teaches you respect for the environment, teaches you that danger can be microscopic and ancient at the same time. A final thought, shooting stars are a story of place. On Earth, shooting stars mean beauty. In orbit, they mean vulnerability. The same particle inspires awe or caution depending on where you stand. That is the strange poetry of spaceflight. The universe stays the same, only our perspective changes. And as humanity moves outward to the moon, to Mars, to habitats in the dark, it will carry this truth. The cosmos is always in motion. And sometimes, that motion hits home. In the middle of a metal spacecraft surrounded by circuitry machinery panels, floating tools, and the endless dark, There is a place where something impossibly gentle happens. A leaf unfurls, a root stretches, a small green life pushes upward toward a sun that isn't a sun. These are the gardens of space chambers filled with glowing LEDs, nutrient mist drifting seeds, and the scent of living things. They are experiments, yes, but they are also something more. They are reminders that wherever humans go, we bring life with us. The root that doesn't know where down is plants evolved on a world where gravity is a teacher. On Earth, roots grow downward, pulled by gravity. Stems grow upward, reaching for light. Cells align and stretch along gravitational cues. Remove gravity and plants become confused. Roots spiral outward. They grow sideways. They curl into mesmerizing shapes. They explore the air, crawling through growth media like curious animals. Stems don't know which way to aim. They drift. They stretch crookedly. They twist in loops as if tasting the air. Microgravity forces plants to abandon instincts millions of years old, and yet they adapt. Instead of gravity, they begin using other signals, moisture gradients, oxygen levels, chemical traces, light direction. The resilience is astonishing. Where humans struggle for weeks to adapt to space plants begin adapting within hours. The strange art of irrigation without down water becomes mischievous in microgravity. It doesn't fall, it clings. It forms spheres that drift like living pearls. On Earth, gravity helps irrigate roots naturally. In space, irrigation becomes a delicate dance. Engineers use mist irrigation, ultrafine droplets dispersed evenly so roots can sip moisture without floating blobs forming. Capillary networks, labyrinths of absorbent material that guide water through channels by surface tension alone. Specialized soil substitutes foams, gels, or baked clay pellets that trap moisture in tiny pockets. Needle injection watering. A small port allows astronauts to inject water directly into the root chamber. Every drop must be controlled. A single floating bead can short a circuit or contaminate equipment. The gardens of space are not watered by hand. They are watered by physics. Artificial suns. LEDs that teach plants how to grow. Plants crave sunlight, but sunlight in space is violent, unfiltered, dangerous. So astronauts give them something gentler, like crafted from diodes. Rows of LEDs glow in red for stem elongation, blue for leaf development, green for visibility, letting astronauts inspect them. Sometimes pink or purple mixes. These artificial suns are meticulously tuned intensity, color ratio, timing cycles, heat output. Plants under LED arrays look almost ethereal, leaves glowing under pink light, stems shimmering under blue illumination. The result is life bathed in a gentle alien daylight, a garden made of colors the Earth rarely uses, the first tastes of off-world agriculture. Astronauts have grown lettuce, Mizuna mustard, radishes, dwarf tomatoes, chili peppers, wheat, zinnias, basil. Each harvest becomes a celebration. When astronauts ate the first space-grown lettuce, they described it as crunchy, beautiful, better than Earth lettuce because it was ours. When the first chili peppers ripened, astronauts made space tacos with tortillas, beef, and fresh peppers. A tiny feast in a place that knows nothing of fields or rain. These moments are not trivial. They are emotional anchors. Food grown in space carries the psychological weight of home. The future greenhouses on Mars. Mars is cold, dry, and sprinkled with toxic perchlorets. Its atmosphere is thin, its sunlight is weak. Yet someday it will hold gardens. Engineers and scientists imagine greenhouses that could thrive in this alien world. 1. Pressurized, dome-shaped greenhouses containing breathable air moisture and Earth-level pressure. 2. Regolith-covered habitats, buried structures insulated by Martian soil to protect plants from radiation. 3. Hybrid LED sunlight systems, using mirrors, fiber optics, and LED arrays to balance warmth and energy input. 4. Water reclamation networks recycling humidity, plant transpiration, grey water, into a closed life-giving loop. 5. Robotic pollinators, small drones or soft robots filling the role bees cannot play on Mars. Colonies will rely on these gardens not only for food but for oxygen, humidity regulation, psychological stability. Plants will become both farmers and therapists. The psychological power of plants in the tight metallic world of space plants are more than biological experiments. They are color, scent, softness, a symbol of life, a link to Earth, a quiet companion. Astronauts often gather around plant chambers during breaks, watching leaves tremble under fans, touching stems, gently inhaling the faint scent of soil or greenery. One astronaut said, "Plants don't judge, they don't talk, they just grow, and sometimes that's exactly what you need." Another, they were the only living things on the station not wearing a spacesuit. In psychological studies, space gardens reduce stress, improve morale, and help astronauts cope with confinement. They offer hope in environments where hope must be actively cultivated. A final meditation. Life always leans toward light. It is poetic that while humans struggle to adapt to microgravity, plants simply begin again growing in strange directions, using new cues, improvising their way through physics that evolution never intended. Plants do not panic, they do not resist. They reach for light, however strange the source, and perhaps that's the lesson humanity will take as it moves into space life finds a way. Roots can learn new languages, leaves can adapt to artificial suns, and wherever humans travel even into darkness, we will carry green things with us, small ambassadors of Earth, whispering, "Here too, life can take root." The first thing astronauts notice when they settle into orbit isn't the floating. It isn't the silence or the view or the weightlessness. It's their own face. Within hours, their reflection becomes strange cheeks, swollen eyelids, puffier noses, smaller necks, smoother. They look like someone who slept upside down for days. This transformation isn't cosmetic, it's the first visible sign that your blood, your heart, your entire circulatory system has left Earth behind. Because when gravity disappears, the body's fluids, blood, lymph plasma begin wandering unanchored. When blood no longer knows where down is on Earth, gravity pulls our blood downward, the legs act as reservoirs. Veins move blood upward against the downward pull. Valves in the veins keep it from slipping back. The heart pumps harder for the lower body than for the upper, but in orbit there is no down. Blood floats upward, pooling in the chest and face. The torso feels tight as if filled with warm water. The head becomes pressurized, full of fluid that doesn't drain. Astronauts describe it as constant nasal congestion, a mild head cold that never ends, a feeling of being upside down for weeks. This shift is called fluid redistribution, and it changes everything from how you breathe to how you see. The heart shrinks when it doesn't have to work. On Earth, the heart is a tireless machine pumping upward, fighting gravity, maintaining blood pressure in the brain. In orbit, the struggle disappears. The heart does not need to work as hard, so it begins to relax, then shrink, losing muscle mass much like legs and back muscles weaken without daily load. A smaller heart becomes efficient in space, but upon returning to Earth, the change becomes a liability. Gravity suddenly returns with full force. Astronauts often feel faint, experience drops in blood pressure, become dizzy, struggle to stand, show signs of orthostatic intolerance. Some collapse when trying to walk off the recovery capsule, not from weakness, but from a heart and vascular system trying to remember gravity. The blood vessels themselves change. Veins and arteries evolve for one environment, Earth. In space, they begin to remodel, the walls relax differently. Valves weaken. Blood pressure shifts. Blood volume decreases because the body thinks it has too much. The kidneys, sensing the chest full of fluid, mistakenly believe the body's overloaded. They begin to purge salt, water, plasma volume, leaving astronauts slightly dehydrated even when drinking normally. This is why astronauts sometimes feel weak or lightheaded when they return, not because space was demanding, but because space convinced their body it didn't need as much blood. The face, a balloon of biology. The puffy face is the most visible and oddly charming part of this transformation. Without gravity, the lymphatic system, the body's natural drainage network, cannot drain fluid from the head efficiently. So astronauts look rounder, softer, fuller. It creates what some jokingly call the space moon face. But behind the humor is a serious physiological truth. The face is swelling because the entire system is struggling to understand the absence of gravity. Eyes bulge slightly, sinuses fill, voices sound nasally. Even the tongue can feel thick. Vision, the hidden cost of a puffy face. Studies now reveal a subtle danger. The pressure increase in the head can gently flatten or distort the shape of the eye. This condition, SANS, spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome, can cause blurry vision, changes in eye shape, swelling of the optic nerve, permanent visual impairments in long missions. The more time astronauts spend in space, the more pronounced the risk becomes. On a long Mars mission, SANS could affect mission performance unless countermeasures are perfected. The search for solutions. Scientists are experimenting with ways to restore downward fluid movement in space. Negative pressure, suits lower body vacuum pants that pull blood toward the legs. Artificial gravity, rotating spacecraft or centrifuge pods that simulate Earth's pull. Vascular training methods to strengthen vessel walls before flight. Volume replenishment before landing. Special hydration and salt regimens to boost plasma volume right before re-entry. Each solution is a reminder that even after 300,000 years of humanity, we still don't fully understand how deeply gravity shapes our biology. A final meditation, the heart that misses home. The puffy face of zero-G is not just a quirk of space travel. It is a message from the body, a reminder that we are creatures of pressure and pull, built for soil and weight, and the steady tug of Earth. Up there, floating in silent orbit, the heart relaxes, the blood drifts, the vessels change. The body begins to forget gravity. But the moment an astronaut returns, you can see it, the relief of a biology coming home. Every heartbeat, every step, every drop of blood resumes its ancient choreography. The swollen face softens, the heart strengthens, the body remembers, and so do we. In movies, space is quiet, a vast, serene emptiness, a place where sound disappears and the universe whispers nothing at all. But real space the space astronauts live in is never silent. Not for a second. Not even close. Inside a spacecraft, silence is not peace. Silence is danger. Instead, astronauts sleep, work, dream, and think inside a cocoon of constant mechanical sound. Fans, pumps, compressors, motors, valves, the low hum of life support systems. It is an artificial heartbeat, the steady murmur of survival. A spacecraft sounds alive because it must be. If the noise stops, something is horribly wrong. The hum that holds you to life on Earth. You forget the sound of HVAC systems, refrigerators, power lines, the wind moving through trees. In orbit, the soundscape is different. Everything you hear is engineered. The fans that push air through the ISS sound like white noise. Wind through vents, a soft mechanical river. The pumps that circulate coolant emit rhythmic knocking. Gentle pulses, the sound of distant machinery. The filtration systems, your first defense against carbon dioxide, produce low-frequency rumbles, a steady pulsing breath. These machines run constantly because the air inside a spacecraft does not naturally circulate. Without fans, oxygen pools. Carbon dioxide forms invisible clouds. Exhaled breath can collect around your face. The noise isn't nuisance. It's oxygen wearing a mechanical mask. Why silence feels like a threat on Earth? Silence is calm. In space, silence is an alarm. Astronauts are trained to notice the soundscape the way sailors listen to the sea. Every hum, rattle, and thrum has meaning. A fan that stops could mean a carbon dioxide buildup. A coolant pump that changes pitch could signal a leak. A silence from the air recycler could be deadly. A missing vibration could mean a system has failed without warning. Astronaut Chris Hadfield once said, "In space, silence is the scariest sound you'll ever hear, because silence is never truly silent. Silence means something important is no longer working. The heartbeat of the ship." Over time, astronauts begin to interpret the ISS's sounds as if it were alive, not metaphorically, but psychologically. The rhythmic hum becomes a pulse. The soft vibration of gyroscopes becomes breathing. The vents whisper like lungs. The coolant lines thrum like arteries. You learn the sound of the ship the way you learn the sound of a loved one asleep in the next room. You can sense when something is off simply because the rhythm feels wrong. One astronaut described it as the station has moods. You learn to read them. Another said the sound is companionship. It means the ship is awake with you. In the silence of space, the mechanical heartbeat becomes emotional protection, the emotional immersion of constant noise. Sleep on the ISS is never quiet. You drift into dreams while fans hiss, pumps click, vents drone, gyros rumble, the station's metal creaks with thermal expansion. The noise becomes a kind of cradle, a steady lull, a reminder that you're not alone, you're inside something that keeps you alive. Some astronauts compare it to falling asleep inside the belly of a friendly giant. Some grow attached to it. Returning to Earth, they miss the hum, miss the vibration, miss the sound of a machine that never rests. One astronaut said, "When I came home, the silence of my bedroom felt like outer space. The danger of sound itself. Noise is safety, but too much noise can be harmful. Inside a spacecraft, decibel levels are high enough that communication becomes harder. Long-term hearing loss is possible. Sleep can be disturbed. Concentration can suffer. So engineers work constantly to dampen sound, shifting the ISS from early-era loudness to a gentler background hum. But they can never silence it completely. A quiet spacecraft would be unsafe. Space is a delicate balance, enough noise to keep you alive, not enough to drive you mad. When machines speak, listening to trouble. Astronauts are trained not just to hear sound, but to interpret it. They listen for frequency changes, rhythmic irregularities, metallic knocks, unusual vibrations, sudden stops. Once astronauts detected a failing cooling pump because the sound changed pitch by just a few hertz. Another time, an odd vibration hinted at a stuck gyroscope. Another, a faint knocking, suggested a floating piece of debris trapped in the ventilation system. The ISS speaks through sound. Astronauts learn its language. The psychology of never being alone. Constant noise affects the mind. You feel surrounded. You feel enclosed. You feel watched over. It creates a strange intimacy, you and the machine sharing the same breath, the same room, the same fate. Some astronauts describe the soundscape as comforting. Others describe it as claustrophobic. Everyone feels it. After enough time, the noise becomes your companion, your reassurance, your reminder that machines like humans must keep moving to stay alive. A final reflection. Life is motion, even in silence. In the void of space where the universe is perfectly mute, the sound of machines becomes a symbol of life. A spacecraft is not just a vehicle, it is a partner, a guardian, a mechanical being whose heartbeat surrounds you. You learn to trust that heartbeat. You sleep to it. You wake to it. You fear the day it falters. Because in space, noise means life. Silence means danger, and the hum of machines becomes the sound of survival itself. Space changes humans in ways we can see: puffy faces, weaker bones, drifting tears. But it also changes things we cannot see. Inside every astronaut is a microscopic universe: viruses, bacteria, fungi, and the immune cells that patrol them. Some are harmless passengers, some help us digest food, some lie dormant, long forgotten, until space wakes them up. Because in orbit, the body's defenses weaken, and the microbes we carry begin behaving strangely. This is one of the quietest, most unsettling truths of space medicine. The farther we travel from Earth, the older biological agreements begin to fail. The immune system slows in microgravity. On Earth, gravity helps regulate everything from blood flow to lymphatic drainage systems the immune system relies on. In space, the immune system becomes disoriented. It loses efficiency. Its cells miscommunicate. Its responses weaken. Astronauts show reduced T-cell activation, altered cytokine signaling, sluggish wound healing, decreased inflammation response, changes in white blood cell distribution. It's as if the immune system becomes sleepy, distracted, or confused. One doctor at NASA described it as your immune system becomes Earthsick. It misses home. Viruses reawaken in orbit. Herpes viruses, HSV, VZV, CMV, EBV never leave the human body. They hide in nerve cells usually dormant, but in space they begin to stir. Studies show that over 60% of astronauts experience viral reactivation. During missions, shingles viruses become detectable. Epstein-Barr virus replication increases. Cytomegalovirus activates. Oral herpes outbreaks occur. Most reactivations are subclinical, silent, but measurable. But they reveal something critical. Space stresses the body at a cellular level. Radiation, microgravity, disrupted sleep, constant mechanical noise confinement, and emotional stress form a perfect pressure system. The immune system, overwhelmed, lets old passengers wake up. As one astronaut put it, "It felt like my past illnesses were following me into space." Bacteria mutate faster in microgravity. Microbes do not just wake up, they change. Experiments on the ISS show that bacteria in microgravity grow more biofilm, express different genes, become more virulent, show increased antibiotic resistance, alter cell morphology. Why? Because microgravity itself reshapes their world. No convection, no sedimentation, no buoyancy. Nutrients reach them differently. Waste disperses slowly. Cell clusters float and form unusual structures. To a microbe, space is not empty. It is paradise. One researcher famously said bacteria don't hate microgravity. They thrive in it. This raises an unsettling question. How will microbial evolution behave on a multi-year Mars mission? What new forms might arise when millions of generations pass in months? Fungi, the quiet problem. Fungi are hardy. They resist radiation. They cling to surfaces. They digest the polymers in spacecraft interiors. In space, they become even more aggressive, growing thicker cell walls, producing more melanin, colonizing air filters, surviving high CO2, enduring desiccation cycles. Some fungi were found growing on the ISS's sealed windows, feeding on radiation. These organisms are not threatening in the short term, but in a deep space mission, spanning years, fungal behavior becomes a critical risk. A new field, space medicine for a microbe-rich future. As humanity prepares for lunar bases, Mars settlements, multi-year voyages, autonomous medical environments, we must understand the biology of both humans and the microbes we carry. Key research areas include 1. Immune system countermeasures artificial gravity chambers, immune-boosting drug protocols, personalized immunotherapy, pre-flight vaccines for latent viruses. 2. Microbial containment technologies, microgravity-adapted antibiotics, antimicrobial surface coatings, UV sterilization loops, self-disinfecting materials. 3. Microbial genomics in orbit, tracking mutation rates in real time to anticipate changes. 4. Psychological and sleep regulation, because stress and poor sleep directly weaken immunity. 5. Microbial ecology of deep space habitats, treating spacecraft interiors as ecosystems that must be balanced. The human risk on long missions, on a 3-year Mars voyage, dormant viruses may fully reactivate, immune systems may weaken to dangerous levels, bacteria may mutate into more aggressive forms, fungal contamination may threaten life support, medical supplies may degrade, crew isolation may impair stress responses, radiation may further suppress immunity. Earth is our biological cradle. Its gravity and atmosphere shape every microscopic relationship in our bodies. Leaving it is not just a journey outward, it is a journey away from the conditions our biology depends on. Astronauts talk about it quietly. Microbial issues are rarely dramatic. No alarms, no emergencies, just subtle signs: a cold sore, a persistent rash, a stomach change, a lingering fatigue, a slower healing. Astronauts rarely discuss these publicly, but in private logs and medical debriefings they admit space changes your body in ways you don't expect. You can feel something is different. It's like your immune system is listening to the wrong signals. A final reflection: humans never travel alone. When we go to space we bring fear, courage, history, hope, but we also bring something else: the microorganisms that have lived with us since before we were human. They come unwillingly, silently, but they come. Some adapt, some awaken, some evolve. As humanity reaches toward Mars and beyond, we must remember, we're not just taking ourselves into the cosmos, we are taking an entire invisible ecosystem. And the future of exploration depends on understanding that as deeply as we understand rockets, habitats, or stars, water in space becomes a creature. It no longer falls, splashes, spills, or obeys. It gathers itself into trembling globes, shimmering jelly-like, delicate as blown glass. Astronauts often say the strangest thing about space is not floating, but watching water learn how to be free. On Earth, gravity tames water. In orbit, it becomes alive. The first shock. Nothing falls. Try to wash your hands in space and the water doesn't pour. It clings, it crawls. It forms silver beads that wobble in the air like newborn worlds. Instead of dripping off your fingers, water coats your skin like a thick living film. If you push it away, it stretches a liquid membrane, pulling tight before snapping into smaller globs. Astronauts describe water in microgravity as a pet, a strange companion, a liquid animal trying to stay whole. Surface tension becomes the ruling force. Water holds itself together as tightly as possible, resisting every attempt to break it apart. The art of washing without gravity. Cleaning your body in space is less like bathing and more like negotiating with a stubborn, shimmering sphere. There are no showers, no running faucets, no drifting steam, just packets of water and a towel that absorbs what gravity no longer pulls away. Here's what washing becomes: water pouches instead of taps. Astronauts release tiny droplets onto their skin. The droplet spreads like syrup coating without falling. Rinseless soap is rubbed through this floating film and wiped off because soap bubbles don't rise without gravity. Hair washing with globes. A floating bead of water is dragged through the hair like a liquid comb, then toweled away. Shaving with sticky water. Because water tries to stay attached to the razor as much as it stays attached to the face. It is not glamorous, but it is quietly mesmerizing. The jelly-like globe, a miracle of surface tension. Surface tension is the invisible force that makes water behave like a single organism. In space, it becomes visible, magnified into a work of art. A single floating glob reflects the station lights like a crystal, vibrates with every touch, quivers when brushed with a finger, merges with other droplets in perfect slow motion, sometimes holds air bubbles like planets within planets. Push gently, and the sphere flattens against your palm. Push hard, and it bursts into a swarm of smaller droplets, each immediately forming its own perfect globe. Astronauts often spend minutes simply playing with these liquid pearls, because water becomes more dramatic than fire, more alien than vacuum, and more beautiful than anyone expects. The emotional poetry of floating water. In microgravity, water becomes a reminder of home, a familiar element transformed into something magical, a link to oceans, rain rivers, memories. Astronauts talk about the way a water sphere trembles like a heartbeat, how light bends inside it like a tiny universe, how touching it feels like touching a living creature. One astronaut said it's like seeing your childhood reflected in a floating crystal. Another water in space is poetry pretending to be physics. Microgravity experiments. Playing with a new element, scientists use these strange properties to study how fluids behave without gravity. Vaccines mixed inside floating droplets. Surface tension controls diffusion, allowing unique crystallization patterns. Fuel tank simulations, because spacecraft fuel behaves exactly like floating water globes. Capillary flow tests, studying how liquids climb channels, cling to corners or bridge gaps. Fire in water experiments. Water globes can contain flames, allowing physicists to examine spherical combustion. Sound wave experiments. A speaker can vibrate a water globe into perfect geometric forms, dancing stars, pulsating spheres, rippling shapes never seen on Earth. These experiments reveal that water is not merely a substance. It is a performer waiting for gravity to release it. The future of water beyond Earth. On Mars or the Moon, water will behave differently in lower gravity. Droplets will fall slowly. Surface tension will dominate more than it does on Earth. Ice may form strange shapes. Boiling points will shift. Vapor will expand dramatically. Future colonies will need to design rotating shower chambers, directional airflow rinsing systems, closed-loop water recyclers, microgravity-safe plumbing networks. Because in space, plumbing is not plumbing, it is fluid choreography. A final meditation. Water teaches us to be humble. Water has shaped Earth, carved valleys, filled oceans, birthed life, but space reveals a hidden truth. Water does not belong to Earth. Earth belongs to water. Remove gravity, and water returns to its true nature, curious, wandering, unified, alive. It becomes a floating mirror of everything fragile and beautiful about life. A tiny trembling world inside the vastness of space. And astronauts drifting beside those liquid pearls learn to see water not just as a resource, but as a companion on humanity's journey outward. The surface of the moon looks soft and silent, a world powdered in grey ash untouched for billions of years. But ask the Apollo astronauts and they'll tell you the moon is covered in the most dangerous dust in the solar system. It is sharp, it is clingy, it destroys metal, scars glass, and infiltrates machines. It tore through seals, irritated lungs, and wore down boots in a matter of hours. Lunar dust is not like Earth dust. It is a weapon made of time, impact, and vacuum. The birth of a deadly powder on Earth. Wind and water smooth our dust into rounded grains. But the moon has no air, no rain, no rivers, only micrometeorites that strike the surface at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. Each impact shatters rock into razor fragments. Each fragment stays razor sharp forever. The result, jagged shards, electrostatically charged particles, glassy splinters, dust that sticks like burrs. The grains cling to everything: gloves, vasers, tools, joints, life support seals. It is as if the moon is made of powdered sandpaper. Apollo, first contact with a killer. The Apollo astronauts were the first humans to truly meet lunar dust, and their descriptions are unforgettable. After the first moonwalk, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin re-entered the lunar module. Dust came in with them, coating boots, gloves, cables, and floors. Buzz Aldrin said it had a gritty, abrasive smell like burnt gunpowder, but it wasn't gunpowder. It only smelled that way because the dust reacted with the moist, oxygen-rich air inside the capsule, something it had never encountered in billions of years. Inside the cabin, astronauts sneezed, throats became irritated, eyes burned. The dust floated everywhere. Apollo 17's Harrison Schmitt suffered such severe lunar hay fever that his crew worried about an allergic reaction. He later said it was the most irritating dust I've ever encountered. And his suit scratched, worn, scoured by a single moonwalk. Imagine months of dust exposure on a future lunar base, the abrasive force that eats spacesuits alive. Lunar dust does not merely stick, it cuts. Suit layers became frayed after only hours on the surface. Visors developed microscopic scratches. Gloves stiffened. Joint bearings threatened to jam. One astronaut described the dust as 1,000,000 tiny knives, all trying to get inside everything you own. A future lunar habitat will face the same danger daily. Dust will erode seals, contaminate airlocks, clog filters, scratch helmet visors, compromise life support systems, degrade solar panels, reduce radiator efficiency. Lunar dust is nature's slow-motion corrosion, a threat not of explosions or storms, but of relentless abrasion. The static curse. Dust that floats, clings and refuses to go away. The moon is electrically active. Without an atmosphere, sunlight charges dust positively. Shadows charge dust negatively. Micrometeorite impacts release electrons. Electrostatic fields build between light and dark regions. The result, dust can levitate, float, jump from surface to surface, cling like magnetic iron filings. Apollo astronauts saw dust suspended above the ground, dancing along shadows, coating equipment instantly. Future lunar explorers will need new technologies, electrostatic brooms, magnetic coatings, self-cleaning suits, or risk bringing lunar dust into every habitat they build. Inside the lunar base, a new kind of environmental threat. Long-term lunar living will require unprecedented dust defenses. Potential countermeasures. 1. Suitport airlocks. Instead of bringing dust-coated suits inside, suits remain attached to the exterior of the habitat. 2. Dust-repellent fabrics. Nanomaterials designed to resist adhesion. 3. Electrodynamic dust shields. Electric fields that repel particles from windows and solar panels. 4. Lunar Roomba-style dust robots. Tiny vacuum bots or sticky rollers roaming the habitat interior. 5. Ultra-redundant filters, because lunar dust will clog everything eventually. 6. Habitat pressurization strategies, to prevent dust from entering via microscopic leaks. The greatest threat to a moon base may not be radiation or meteorites, but dust that slowly grinds equipment into failure. The science of lunar dust in our bodies. Lunar dust is toxic in ways we are only starting to understand. Sharp particles irritate lung tissue. Their glassy edges resist breakdown. Reactive surfaces cause inflammation. Oxidative stress may damage cells. Long-term exposure may cause fibrosis or silicosis-like diseases. During the Apollo missions, the longest exposure was only a few days. Future explorers may live on the moon for months or years. Space medicine must answer new questions. How does lunar dust affect lung lining fluids? Does it penetrate deeper tissues? Can microscratches accumulate into chronic harm? Do dust particles trigger immune responses? The moon is not biologically friendly. It is in a sense chemically hostile. The moon's smell. A poetic, unsettling memory. The gunpowder scent of the moon remains one of the most poetic and eerie descriptions in all of space exploration. Every Apollo astronaut noticed it. Some said it smelled like spent fireworks, others like burnt charcoal, or like something ancient waking up. It wasn't combustion. It was chemistry, the moon finally touching Earth's air after a lifetime in vacuum. For a moment, the lunar module became a laboratory of two worlds meeting. The oldest dust in the solar system finally inhaled oxygen, and exhaled a smell of fire it never knew. A final meditation, the beauty and danger of powdered time. Lunar dust is not just debris. It is history, 4.5 billion years of impacts shattered into microscopic knives. It is beautiful. It is deadly. It is the moon's quiet defense against intruders. As humanity prepares to return to build bases, farms, laboratories, we must respect this silent threat. Because the moon is not soft. It is sharp. It is ancient. It is untamed. And its dust remembers every meteor that ever struck it, waiting now to meet us again. In orbit, drifting above a world of oceans, thunderstorms, continents, and sleeping cities moving 28,000 kilometers per hour through the night and day, astronauts still need haircuts. It is one of the gentlest truths of life in space. Even while humanity outruns sunsets, skirts the edge of vacuum and lives inside humming machines. The small rituals of being human follow us upward, and a haircut, simple, ordinary, intimate, is one of the most grounding rituals of all. The strange technology of vacuum clippers. In zero gravity, a haircut is an engineering challenge. Cut hair doesn't fall, it floats. A single strand can drift into eyes, instruments, air filters, fans, circuits, ventilation systems. So clippers in space are not really clippers. They are tiny vacuum cleaners with blades inside. The device, affectionately called the Flowbee on steroids, sucks hair in as it cuts, trapping every strand in a sealed chamber. Turn it on, and you hear a low whir, the gentle vibration of the vacuum, the sound of humanity stubbornly continuing its routines above Earth. The haircut becomes a small mechanical symphony echoing around the station's metal walls. The art of cutting hair while floating on Earth, you sit in a chair. In space, you anchor your feet to a wall or strap your legs through loops. The barber, a fellow crew member, floats beside you, bracing themselves with a knee or handhold. Every motion is slow, deliberate, careful. Clip, vacuum, pause. Clip, vacuum, pause. Hair floats into the suction tube with the grace of drifting snowflakes. The strands twist and dance for a fraction of a second, then vanish. Astronauts describe the experience as calming, intimate, quietly funny, a moment of normal in a place that is anything but. There is no salon, no mirror on a stand, just crewmates, the sound of the vacuum, and a tiny cloud of hair dust disappearing into machinery. The psychology of grooming in space. Astronauts live in tight quarters surrounded by noise pressure, metal, and routine. Days blur. Earth looks unreal. The human mind craves grounding. A haircut becomes more than grooming. It becomes a reminder of identity, a moment of normalcy, a quiet anchor against isolation, a ritual of self-renewal. Astronauts often trim their hair before major tasks, crew events, or calls with family, tiny acts of dignity, in a place where dignity transforms into practicality. One astronaut said, "A haircut made me feel human again." Another, "It was the closest thing to visiting home." Intimate moments between crew members. Haircuts create a kind of intimacy rarely talked about in space documentaries. Working close together, floating side by side, one person caring for another with slow, careful motions. It creates a shared moment of vulnerability. Astronauts talk about the laughter of a crooked cut, the concentration of lining up a neckline while drifting, the trust of handing someone a device that buzzes near your ear in zero-G, the small conversations that bloom in that suspended closeness. These are moments without mission objectives, engineering tasks, or scientific goals, just friendship, companionship, humanity. In a place far from Earth, these moments matter deeply. The choreography of small rituals. Without gravity, every simple task becomes a dance. Toothpaste floats, socks drift, scissors wander, towels roll away like soft clouds, clippers push you backward with recoil, so astronauts choreograph haircuts with gentle precision. The barber floats behind one hand on a railing, one hand holding the clippers. The customer stays anchored but relaxed, letting the hum and vibration wash over them. Sometimes the cabin lights dim. Sometimes someone jokes about the ISS being the most expensive barbershop in history. Sometimes another crew member floats by upside down to watch. These micro-rituals bond the crew more strongly than training ever could. When a haircut becomes a memory of Earth. After weeks or months without gravity, grooming becomes emotional. Smelling shampoo, feeling a clean neckline, seeing yourself in the mirror and recognizing the person you were before launch. These sensations bloom into nostalgia. A haircut becomes a sensory letter from home, a memory of childhood barbershops, family kitchens, bathroom mirrors. On the ISS, one astronaut saved a lock of freshly cut hair, sealed in plastic planning to take it home. It reminded me that part of me still belongs to Earth. The future of space haircuts. As humanity prepares for long-term lunar habitation, multi-year Mars missions, orbital stations, deep space journeys, the simple haircut becomes part of psychological design. Future spacecraft may include dedicated grooming nooks, microgravity-safe scissors, autonomous vacuum clippers, mood lighting for relaxation, hairstyling robots already in early development, because maintaining identity and normalcy will be essential for mental health during years away from Earth. Rituals sustain the soul when the universe grows vast and silent. A final meditation. Humanity persists in the smallest acts. A haircut in orbit is a paradox, tiny in significance, massive in meaning. It shows that no matter how far from Earth we drift, no matter the speed, the silence, the danger, we carry our humanity with us. We cut our hair, we laugh, we talk, we help each other. We take care of ourselves and each other in the smallest, most tender ways. And in those moments, the ISS is not just a spacecraft. It is a home, a place of life. A place where people remain people even as they race around the world every 90 minutes. Inside a spacesuit, an astronaut's hands become warriors, fighting vacuum pressure, stiffness, cold and time. Every motion, every grasp, every twist of a tool is a negotiation with physics itself. Because a spacesuit glove is not a glove. It is a pressurized balloon your hand must wrestle into obedience. And out there with Earth a glowing sphere below and the sun a white fire above your hands, become the front line between survival and catastrophe. The war against pressure on Earth. Moving your fingers is effortless. In space, the gloves fight back. Suit gloves are inflated to provide breathable pressure. Push your fingers forward and you must compress that pressurized volume, like squeezing an inflated basketball with each finger. The effort is enormous. Gripping a handrail feels like squeezing a vice. Turning a bolt feels like lifting weights. Pulling a tether feels like wringing out a thick, rigid hose. Pinching precision tools becomes almost impossible. Astronauts often finish a spacewalk with fingernail bruises, blisters, skin abrasions, raw knuckles, swollen joints, numb fingertips. One veteran spacewalker said your hands age 10 years in 6 hours. Another, it feels like arm wrestling the universe. Stiffness, pain, and the mindset of endurance. Every EVA is a test of endurance. After an hour, gloves begin to ache. After 2, hands tremble. After 3, fatigue pulses up the arms. After 4, pain becomes a steady, burnished companion. And yet astronauts keep working because spacewalks are dangerous, expensive, and precious. Every minute counts. There is a quiet, stoic discipline in astronauts who continue tightening bolts, cutting wires, installing antennas, and replacing solar modules despite the screaming tendons inside their gloves. Astronauts describe the mental shift. You stop waiting for comfort. You accept the pain as part of the work. The limitations of human touch in space. Hands are the most expressive tools humans possess. In space, gloves blunt that genius. Inside the suit, you cannot feel textures. You cannot sense temperature. You cannot judge force precisely. You cannot manipulate small objects easily. You cannot feel when something begins to slip. You cannot rely on the natural intelligence of your skin. A glove turns your dexterity into approximations. You become clumsy, powerful, imprecise, a giant trying to thread a needle. Small screws disappear. Thin wires jump away. Delicate tasks become monumental. Every EVA training session on Earth includes dropping tools, fumbling clasps, misaligning panels, not because astronauts lack skill, but because the gloves steal skill away. The future, exoskeleton, gloves that lend their strength. Engineers know the struggle, and they are building new hands for the future. Exoskeleton gloves powered by micromotors, tension cables, responsive actuators, pressure-assisted finger joints are designed to give astronauts superhuman strength in spacewalks. Imagine gripping with the power of a hydraulic press, turning bolts as if they were loose bottle caps, holding tools without strain, performing delicate repairs without trembling hands, moving fingers with natural ease, having robotic assistance that anticipates your motions. These gloves don't just reduce effort, they multiply human ability. Some prototypes amplify finger force by 300 or 400%. Others adapt finger movement to replicate natural dexterity through powered joints. The next generation of astronauts may no longer endure pain for every EVA. Their gloves will fight the universe for them. Soft robotic gloves. The second evolution. A revolution is coming not in metal but in softness. Soft robotic gloves use air-filled channels, flexible polymers, silicone tendons, liquid-driven muscles, to mimic the way biological hands move. These gloves will bend smoothly, grip gently, mimic natural motion, distribute force evenly, avoid pressure points, reduce fatigue dramatically. Soft robotics blur the line between human and machine. They turn gloves into exoskin layers that move with the hand instead of resisting it. Inside them, astronauts will regain the subtlety of touch denied for decades. The dream direct haptic feedback. The holy grail of spacesuit glove design is simple to describe and hard to achieve: feeling. Researchers are developing gloves with pressure sensors, vibration motors, force feedback, temperature mimicking, fingertip haptics, These systems will send tactile information through the glove into the astronauts' neural pathways, telling them how hard they're gripping, whether a bolt is aligned, how much torque they're applying, whether a surface is smooth or textured. It will be like touching space directly through a layer of engineered nerve endings. The humanity of touch, even beyond Earth hands, do more than work. They express identity, a handshake, a gesture, a pat on the shoulder, a reassuring squeeze. Inside the suit, hands are imprisoned. Touch becomes impossible. Future gloves may allow astronauts to sense each other's grip, a tiny return of humanity to a world of metal and vacuum. A simple gesture that says, "I'm here. You're not alone. We're doing this together." The shared pain of EVA crews. Astronauts speak softly about the camaraderie of sore hands. After a spacewalk, they compare blisters, soak their fingers, stretch aching joints, laugh about dropped tools, quietly acknowledge the struggle, admire each other's endurance. These small human moments bind crews together more deeply than training ever could. Pain shared becomes a kind of solidarity proof that even orbiting Earth at 28,000 km each, astronauts remain flesh and blood. A final meditation, hands against the universe. When an astronaut reaches out during a spacewalk and grips a metal handrail floating above the world, they are not just holding equipment, they are holding back the cosmos. Their hands, aching, swollen stiff, become symbols of human will. Proof that even in a place without air, soil or sound, we persist. One fingertip at a time, one motion at a time, one breath inside a fragile suit at a time. We fight the universe not with technology alone, but with the quiet strength of human hands refusing to let go. In orbit, nothing falls, nothing clatters to the floor, nothing rolls under a table or disappears behind a cabinet. When you lose something in space, it doesn't drop. It drifts slowly, silently, gracefully, becoming part of the orbital ballet that surrounds Earth. A floating glove, a runaway wrench, a flashlight that slipped from its tether, a camera that drifted from an astronaut's hand, a tool bag worth $1 million tumbling end over end into the void. These objects don't just vanish. They become part of a growing halo of human mistakes circling the planet. This is the story of the things we lose in space and the danger they become. The first, escaped items. The list of lost objects reads like a strange museum inventory. A glove released accidentally during Gemini 4, a camera during Gemini 10, pliers during STS-51, a spatula during ISS construction, a paint scraper, a thermal blanket from STS-117, vials, bolts, pins, screws, a toothbrush, a bag of tools in 2008 drifting into the black. Each one floated serenely away, becoming an orbiting relic of a momentary lapse or a simple slip of physics. Astronauts often feel a pang of guilt and awe as the object drifts off into sunlight, glowing like a tiny artificial star. One astronaut said, "It looked so peaceful drifting away until I remembered it was now a bullet." The transformation from object to threat. A tool bag floating outside the ISS is not harmless. In fact, it's dangerous. At orbital speeds 28,000 km/h, even a screw can hit with the force of an exploding grenade. These lost objects become shrapnel, hazards to spacecraft, threats to future missions, risks to satellites, potential punctures in station modules. A toothbrush at that velocity can shatter metal. The thing you lose does not simply vanish. It becomes a weapon launched by inertia. The invisible forest of space. Junk Earth is surrounded by 30,000 plus tracked objects larger than 10 centimeters, 1,000 to 1,000 fragments between 1 and 10 centi, 100,000 plus particles smaller than 1 centimeter, and every EVA, every satellite deployment, every lost screw contributes to this forest of flying metal. Astronauts sometimes see tiny streaks of light, micrometeoroids, or debris flash by the station windows. Space is not empty. It is cluttered with the ghosts of human activity. The Kessler syndrome. When chaos becomes cascade, imagine one piece of debris hitting a satellite. It creates new debris. That debris hits something else. That creates more debris, which hits more satellites, which creates clouds of fragments. A chain reaction that could turn low Earth orbit into a storm of bullets, too dangerous for satellites, rockets, or even the ISS. This is the Kessler syndrome proposed by NASA scientist Donald Kessler in 1978. It is not science fiction. It is a scenario we are edging closer to. One bad collision could trigger a runaway cascade shutting down GPS, communication satellites, weather monitoring, Earth observation, military satellites, space exploration, Orbit could become unusable for decades or centuries. A single bolt could start the avalanche. The human moment, watching a tool drift away. Astronauts who lose tools describe the moment as painful, a mix of helplessness, frustration, and surreal wonder. You reach, you miss. Your tether is too short. And suddenly the object is receding, spinning like a tiny moon. The sun catches it, it flashes, it vanishes into darkness. One astronaut said it felt like saying goodbye to a mistake that would outlive me. Another, you want to chase it, but all you can do is watch. And sometimes once it's gone, mission control quietly adds its new orbit to tracking databases. A sad practical ritual. The future. Cleaning up a sky full of yesterday. As humanity expands into orbit, we must become caretakers of the space around Earth. Engineers are designing solutions. Harpoon satellites to spear large pieces of debris and drag them downward. Nets and capture drones that envelop fragments and deorbit them. Electrodynamic tethers that use Earth's magnetic field to slow and remove junk. Laser nudging systems nudging pieces into decaying orbits from afar. Sticky gel catchers to trap small debris like cosmic flypaper. Autonomous cleanup bots that roam orbit like robotic janitors. For a future with lunar bases, Mars missions and orbital shipyards cleaning the sky is as essential as exploring it. The philosophy of lost things in the void, every piece of lost space debris is a symbol of human fallibility, of the fragility of exploration, of the permanence of mistakes in vacuum, of the need for collective responsibility. In space, nothing decays, nothing rusts, nothing disappears. A screwdriver lost in 2025 may still be orbiting Earth in 2125. A bolt dropped during an EVA could threaten a spacecraft decades later. Space remembers what we lose, a final meditation holding on to what matters. The things we lose in space teach us humility. A drifting bolt is a reminder of fragility. A wandering tool bag is a reminder of precision. A floating glove is a reminder of our humanity, our clumsiness, our limits, our need to do better. Earth below is full of forests, mountains, oceans, and life. Above it, a thin shell of metal debris warns us that expanding into the cosmos requires maturity. What we lose in space becomes part of space, and part of our story. On Earth, a breath is effortless, automatic, invisible. A silent gift from a planet that has spent billions of years perfecting the art of life. On Mars, a breath is manufactured, fragile, engineered, deliberate. A chemical miracle repeated thousands of times each day just to keep one human alive. Mars is beautiful, Mars is majestic, but Mars is a world where oxygen is not a right, it is a machine. The Martian air, a dead atmosphere. The air on Mars is thin, less than 1% the density of Earth's. And what little atmosphere exists is almost entirely carbon dioxide, 95% CO2. 10% nitrogen, 100% argon, traces of oxygen, 0.13%, traces of water vapor. This means you cannot breathe it. You cannot survive in it. Your blood would not stay liquid in it. Your lungs would collapse without pressure. Your body heat would vanish into the thin air instantly. Mars is a place where the atmosphere rejects you. To live there, humans must create a bubble of Earth around themselves, a portable fragment of a lost homeland. Moxie, the first machine to breathe like a tree in 2021, a golden box the size of a toaster landed on Mars aboard the Perseverance rover. Its name, Moxie Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment. This little machine did something extraordinary. It breathed. Moxie sucked in Martian CO2 and split the molecules with electricity, CO2. From that reaction, it produced oxygen molecules, tiny precious breaths of manufactured life. It was the first demonstration that humans could one day make air on Mars. A future colony will rely on machines like Moxie not once a day, not once an hour, but every second rumbling and humming to keep people alive. Humanity's future breath will be an electrical equation. An engineered exhale of survival. The fragility of life support on an alien world. Imagine waking up on Mars. Your oxygen comes from machines. Your water comes from machines. Your warmth comes from machines. Your pressure comes from machines. A single failure is not an inconvenience. It is a knife at the throat of the colony. Life support on Mars must battle dust storms that last months, temperatures that drop to 100 degrees, radiation that corrodes electronics, thin atmosphere that carries static charges, dust so fine it infiltrates everything. Human breath must be filtered, humidified, warmed, separated from CO2, circulated, continuously renewed. Every inhale is choreographed by engineering. Every exhale enters a loop of chemical reclamation. Breathing becomes a partnership between biology and machinery. A metaphor made real on Mars to be alive is to collaborate with your habitat. Frozen water, the blue gold of Mars. Oxygen is one half of survival. Water is the other. Mars holds vast quantities of water, but almost all of it is locked away as ice beneath the poles, beneath the soil, mixed with dust, frozen into permafrost, trapped inside minerals. To live on Mars, long-term colonists will mine subsurface ice with heated drills, frozen soil that must be melted, hydrated minerals that must be baked, ancient glacier fields beneath dust blankets. Water must be extracted, purified, electrolyzed, recycled from humidity, reclaimed from urine, reused again and again. A Martian colony will be a cathedral of plumbing, a place where water loops circle endlessly, never wasted, never discarded. Every system interlocks with every other. On Mars, survival systems do not operate alone. Oxygen production depends on electricity, compressors, filters, pumps, thermal control. Water production depends on heaters, pressure vessels, chemical scrubbers. Waste management depends on biological digestion, temperature stability. Food production depends on water, CO2, light, pressurized greenhouses. Each system leans on the next. Each failure cascades. A Martian habitat is a woven tapestry of engineering. A single tear can spread to the whole cloth. The metaphor made real breathing as engineering on Earth. Breath is instinct. On Mars it is architecture. Every breath must be manufactured, must be maintained, must be monitored, must be protected. A child born on Mars would grow up learning that breath is not free. Air is not invisible. It is a resource, precious, fragile, made through effort and power. Breathing becomes a science. Breathing becomes a ritual. Breathing becomes a responsibility. The future of Martian life support. Engineers imagine systems that work together seamlessly. Oxygen farms, rows of Moxie-like machines, generating oxygen day and night. Ice mines under domes, automated drills pulling frozen water from the ground. Greenhouse lungs, plants recycling CO2, enriching oxygen, soothing the habitat with scent and color. Pressure-sealed cities, layers of life support wrapped in redundancy, triple filters, emergency pumps, living wall bioreactors. Personal breathing packs, portable system blending oxygen from tanks and habitat output. Mars will not be conquered with rockets. It will be conquered with ventilation diagrams, pump redundancies, and fluid recycling loops. The human side. Listening to the machines that keep you alive. Astronauts on Mars will learn to sleep to the sound of compressors. They will hear oxygen generators humming like metallic lungs. They will trust the quiet rumble of pumps circulating air. One day, someone will say, "The habitat sounds healthy today." Just as we say a person sounds healthy when we hear their breath. In a Martian home, machines will breathe with you. Machines will be your companions. The habitat will exhale when you inhale. You will share its rhythm. A final meditation. When humanity redefines breath. Breath has always been a symbol of life, from ancient myths to modern science. On Mars, breath becomes something deeper, a contract between humans and the machines they build. A reminder that life is not guaranteed. It must be engineered, nurtured, and respected. And when settlers stand under the salmon skies of Mars, feeling the regulated oxygen in their lungs, they will carry with them a truth older than civilization. To live is to breathe. To breathe on Mars is to create life from a dead world. There are moments in human history that divide time before and after. The first fire, the first boat, the first orbit, the first footprint on the moon. But one day, perhaps soon, perhaps after many lifetimes, a human will place a boot into the red dust of Mars, and everything will change again. Not because a new world will have been reached, but because humanity will have crossed a border in its own soul. This is the story of that future moment, the once-in-a-humanity first footstep on Mars, the loneliest moment ever lived. The first person to step onto Mars will be more alone than any human being has ever been. They will stand 54 million kilometers from Earth, with a delay of up to 22 minutes in every message, in a landscape that has never known sound, under a sky that has never heard a human voice. No one will hear their breathing except the suit's sensors. No one will feel the ground shake beneath them. No one will stand beside them when they take that step. It will be a moment of absolute isolation in the universe holding its breath. One astronaut described the idea of this moment as a silence so complete it feels holy. The first footprint. A symbol beyond technology. When the foot presses into the Martian dust, it will sink slightly into grains older than any mountain on Earth, ash from ancient volcanoes, fragments of meteorites, the powdered memory of a planet that once flowed with water. That footprint will be more than a mark. It will be a declaration, a question, a promise, a mirror. It will mean that a species born in forests and oceans has set foot on another planet. It will mean that consciousness, the rarest phenomenon we know, has expanded its territory. It will mean that life has become multiplanetary. The view no human has ever seen, imagine standing on Mars. The horizon is farther away than Earth's curved gently under a thin salmon sky. Mountains rise like frozen waves. Dunes ripple in silence. Ancient riverbeds wind toward the distance like scars left by vanished seas. And above it all, two small moons drift, Phobos rushing, Deimos creeping. Earth is not a blue globe in this sky. It is a faint star, a pale dot, a memory. The first human on Mars will look up and see their entire species compressed into a single point of light. They will feel distance not as numbers but as emotion. The weight of civilization pressing through a boot, that first step, will carry the weight of every myth, every explorer, every scientist, every parent, every dream, every fear, every child looking up at the night sky, every moment that led to humanity asking what's out there. It will be the next chapter in a story tens of thousands of years long, from spears to rockets, from campfires to life support systems, from caves to pressurized habitats. It will say, we came from one world, but we are not bound to one world. The philosophy of the first footstep. Standing on Mars will change the way we understand ourselves. For the first time, a human will experience a sunrise filtered through dust, shadows that fall differently because the sun is farther away, footsteps that sound like nothing because the air is too thin to carry noise, a sky with no birds, no clouds, no wind strong enough to whistle. It will provoke questions as old as humanity. Who are we? Why are we here? What does it mean to belong to a species that can leave its cradle? The first human on Mars will not just explore a new world, they will explore a new state of being, the lonely beauty of that first moment. There will be no applause, no roar of crowds, no echo of engines, no voice telling them they did well. Only the hush of their own breath inside the suit, the crunch of dust beneath pressure boots, and the quiet realization I am the only human being on an entire planet. Loneliness becomes awe. Awe becomes humility. Humility becomes purpose. The first Martian footsteps will be taken not for one nation, but for everyone, for every child who ever stared at stars, for every person who ever wondered if we could do more than survive. The cosmic perspective. A species taking responsibility. When that first boot presses into red dust, we will prove that intelligence can defy extinction by stepping beyond its origin. Mars will mark our resilience, our fragility, our courage, our responsibility to be stewards of worlds, not just consumers of one. Becoming interplanetary is not a conquest. It is an obligation, a promise to the universe that life once awakened will not vanish quietly. A final meditation, the footstep that opens the future. One day, long after the first human leaves that footprint, children may grow up in orange-lit domes on Mars. They may walk to school in pressurized suits. They may play beside frozen canyons and ancient lakes. They may study that first footprint the way we study cave paintings, a symbol of when humanity decided to expand its boundaries from one world to another. And when future explorers walk across Mars in the sunset glow of two small moons, they will feel the echo of that moment, the moment one human stepped into the dust of another planet and changed what our species could be. There is a moment after all the machinery has quieted, after the stories of Mars and microgravity and drifting tears fade, when the universe feels close, not cold, not distant, but intimate. A presence, a kind of intelligence that doesn't speak in words but in patterns, pulses, and the slow, patient logic of things that have existed far longer than we have. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, we return to that idea that the cosmos is not empty, but thinking in ways we're only beginning to understand. The first minds were never human. Long before humans imagined stars or wrote equations, before brains became complex enough to dream, life was experimenting with awareness. A jellyfish drifting through dark water has no brain. As we understand it, just a rhythm, a pulsing lattice of neurons firing in tiny waves. Yet it responds, learns, navigates a world of currents and light. Corals, anchored silent, make collective decisions about spawning timed with the moon and tides. Each tiny polyp contributes a whisper of chemistry to a larger unseen choice. A reef is not just alive, it is aware in its own slow tidal way. Ant colonies think in parallel, no leader, no general, just thousands of tiny decisions weaving themselves into a superorganism. One ant is simple, a colony is computational elegance. These are minds without singular brains, minds that emerge from patterns, from cooperation, from connection. The cosmos does not reserve intelligence for creatures who walk on two legs. The human mind, a bridge between worlds. Your mind is stranger and more miraculous than you realize. It can imagine galaxies it has never seen. It can remember childhood with the softness of a fading photograph. It can blend memories with dreams, turning them into stories, into futures, into entire universes. Human intelligence is not only thought, it is feeling, metaphor, wonder, the ability to hold contradictions tenderly like fire cupped in the hands. You're a biological experiment in cosmic creativity, a way the universe looks back at itself with curiosity. Inside you, billions of neurons speak in electrical whispers. They carry the scent of rain, the warmth of sunlight, the face of someone you love, the quiet ache of longing, the thrill of discovery. You're stardust, but you're also story. The macromind, how the universe thinks in patterns. Zoom outward past the mind of a single human, past the intelligence of a colony or a coral reef or a migrating flock. What if the universe holds layers of intelligence, each woven from matter and energy? In different combinations, galaxies spin like enormous clockworks. Magnetic fields bend particles into luminous curtains of aurora. Stars fuse hydrogen in their hearts, balancing gravity and pressure in equations that never fail. Even the vast cosmic web, the filaments of dark matter and galaxies, resembles the firing pattern of a brain on a scale so immense that distance becomes abstraction. Some scientists say it's just coincidence, patterns echoing other patterns. But perhaps thought itself is not unique to brains. Perhaps thought is what matter does when it organizes itself enough to notice patterns. The cosmos works while you sleep. As you close your eyes, the intelligence of the body takes over. Your heart pulses with its ancient rhythm. Your lungs breathe without instruction. Your cells repair themselves. Your memories reorganize into meaning. Your dreams test emotions the waking mind avoids. Sleep is not unconsciousness. It is cooperation. It is the body's quiet, hidden intellect doing its work in darkness. Outside your window, the earth rotates smoothly, carrying you through stardust and shadow. Far above, the solar wind breathes against the magnetosphere, painting auroras in places you will never see. Galaxies drift, stars ignite. Black holes whisper gravity into the fabric of space-time. Everything is moving, everything is thinking, everything is alive in its own way. You are part of a larger mind. The cosmos is not instructing you, it is accompanying you. Every atom in your body was born inside a star. Every breath you take is borrowed from ancient oceans and forests. Every thought you have is a ripple in a biological network that took the universe billions of years to construct. When you rest, you are returning that borrowed energy to the system that created you. You are participating in the quiet intelligence of existence, a pattern that stretches from neurons to ecosystems to planets to galaxies. A soft goodnight from the universe. And now as your mind grows quiet and your breath becomes slow, the cosmos offers a kind of lullaby. Not in sound, not in words, but in the steady constancy of its rhythms, waves meeting shorelines, stars turning in their orbits, jellyfish pulsing beneath moonlit water, corals syncing their lives to lunar cycles, ant colonies solving puzzles older than language, your own thoughts dissolving into dreams. Let the darkness soften. Let the patterns blur. Let your body float in the quiet gravity of sleep. Tonight you rest inside a thinking universe, held by its rhythms, protected by its patterns, carried gently through the dark. Good night. Drift softly. The cosmos will keep thinking while you dream.